Meet the protagonist of this story, Yoo-won. He's inside the goblin's den, and let me tell you, he's so overpowered that he's literally cutting down countless goblins without even moving from his spot. The other goblins in the area are starting to cower as they witness this guy brutally cutting down everything in sight without even caring who's in his way. One of the terrified goblins tries to hit him with a pesky little arrow, but it's quickly smashed by his club, which is literally moving on its own. Now, the goblins are even more afraid and recoiling in apprehension. But sadly for these poor critters, they're not getting away unscathed. Yoo-won then transforms his club into a literal enchanted gun, ready to incinerate every goblin in sight. Okay, having all this power is cool and all, but let's take a moment to dive into Yoo-won's origin story and see how he got to this point. Ever since he was 4 years old, practically a toddler, Yoo-won was exceptional at recognizing languages. He was so good at it that his parents started freaking out over how he could understand so many different languages. His proud grandpa always boasted about his grandson, claiming that a child had been born who would fulfill their family's long-cherished wish by reclaiming the Tower of Babel for their family. Of course, Yoo-won's parents never believed in such tall tales, which always made the old man furious. You see, according to their family lore, long ago, in a chaotic world, the great ancestors of the Ban family possessed the ability to allow everyone to communicate. With that power, they united people of all species and built a tower that would never collapse. That tower was called the Tower of Babel. Yoo-won's interest was piqued as soon as he heard about that tower. Not because he was fascinated by his ancestors' history, but because he was a greedy little brat who wanted to profit from it. So, he begged his grandpa to reveal where the tower was located. Sadly for him, his grandpa didn't know the exact location. However, the old man filled his little grandson with hope, saying that once they found that tower, their family would regain all their power and glory. At this point, Yoo-won always hoped that his extraordinarily linguistic talent could help him regain his family's prestige, just as he'd heard in the stories. Surprisingly, his abilities far exceeded those expectations. As time passed, he grew into a young lad, and one day he was sitting anxiously, waiting to see if he had been accepted into the university. While he was refreshing the window screen for the results, a weird digital window popped up in front of him. What was even stranger about this window was that everything written in it was in some kind of foreign language. He tried to read it, and the system window revealed that it was a congratulatory note from the best academy in an alternate dimension for passing the document screening. Of course, Yoo-won was completely boggled because he had no clue how he could read this, or what all this nonsense even meant. As he read further, the system revealed that he had been summoned to the practical evaluation venue, and if he passed, he would become a prospective student. The note stated he would be transported there in 10 seconds. The countdown began, and our clueless idiot had no idea what the hell was going on. Right at that moment, he also received the acceptance letter from the university, confirming that he had passed. Of course, he already knew he would succeed, but he still felt nervous about the countdown ticking down. Once it ended, a blue light enveloped him, and he vanished before his mother could see him. She was left wondering where he had gone. Suddenly, he found himself falling into a dark tunnel, and another system popped up, announcing that a special practical evaluation for candidates from lower dimensions had begun. Yoo-won was utterly confused, wondering if he had entered some sort of game. Meanwhile, the system instructed him to defeat a blind goblin and destroy the dungeon core. All he could do was scream in frustration for getting dragged into a mess he never signed up for. He wanted to know what in the hell this practical evaluation and all this special exam nonsense even meant. Right at that moment, he hears the threatening sounds of footsteps, and Yoo-won literally starts sweating bullets when he sees these disgusting, ugly creatures with clubs in hand. It seems these creatures can't actually see him, but they can hear him clearly. The two goblins are talking in their own language, but surprisingly, our boy can understand them perfectly. He's not thrilled to hear them referring to him as prey. He starts piecing things together about what the system notification said regarding the practical evaluation, blind goblins, and the dungeon core. He thinks to himself that he really has to defeat these creatures to get out of here because this whole setup feels like something straight out of a game or a novel. The goblins are trying to detect him, while Yoo-won is literally crying over his rotten luck, wondering how he's supposed to defeat these creatures when he hasn't even killed a rat in his life, let alone something dangerous. One of the goblins finally swings its club, and it lands just a few centimeters away from his crotch, almost hitting him right between the legs. He's literally only a centimeter away from getting castrated. The goblin swings its club again, but this time Yoo-won dodges out of the way, and he tries to remain calm to not draw their attention. However, it looks like his presence has already been exposed to these relentless goblins, and they attempt to smash him once more. Ban jumps away just in time, narrowly saving himself. The two goblins then converse about the exact location of the sound. This makes our boy realize that even though these creatures are blind, they are sensitive to sounds and movements as well. It seems they hunt by cornering their prey while talking to each other. He's sure that no matter how well he hides, he's eventually going to get caught. Ban Yoo-won finally comes up with a clever idea and throws a pebble in another direction. The monsters quickly charge toward the source of the sound without a shred of hesitation, but all they find are 2 pebbles. That's when Ban takes advantage of the distraction and hits one of the goblins down with a giant rock. Confused, the 2 goblins begin to attack each other, thinking they're fighting their enemy. They beat the living daylights out of one another, fighting until the very end, and eventually, they both go down for the count after smashing each other's heads. Ban nearly shits his pants at the sight of this brutal mess. As he huffs profusely, he notices the club the creatures were using lying nearby. He grabs the club, apologizes to the 2 green bastards for what he's about to do, and finally brings it down on their heads to make sure they're really out for the count. Just as the goblins lie dead, a bright light shimmers around them, and a system notification pops up, congratulating Ban on his first successful hunt in the dungeon. As a reward, he is granted the power of the higher dimensions. A strange enchantment begins to swirl around his hand, and his system shows that the power of the Babylonian code has been unlocked. The system reveals that this power will be displayed using ideograms, a language familiar to the holder. If you don't know about ideograms, these are characters that convey meaning through their form, representing concepts or things. The system notification tells him that Chinese characters have registered. Unlike phonetic characters that represent sounds, these characters convey meaning directly through their shapes. From the 2 goblins, the common concepts of demon and life were extracted from their flesh, along with other concepts too complex or insignificant for the holder's current level to absorb. This shocks Ban Yoo-won even more because, as far as he can understand, his ability is not just about language, he can literally extract concepts from things. The system then indicates that he is about to absorb 0.2 demons, and demons are inherently a concept that humans cannot possess. It is recommended to store or separate this in the Babylonian code and apply it to other objects. He then decides to try absorbing another concept, and grabs the hovering symbol from the air and places it on his chest. The system promptly reveals that he has absorbed 0.4 life, increasing his life to 10.4 and enhancing his abilities and potential. He then absorbs 0.2 flesh as well, which raises his fleshiness to 10.2 and makes his body healthier. He then twiddles his fingers and notices that not only is he feeling better overall, but his grip strength, leg strength, and everything else has significantly improved. Basically, he had absorbed these 2 goblins' abilities, and once their powers were transferred to him, their bodies disappeared. All that was left were 2 clubs. If applying concepts works on him, Ban Yoo-won figures it should work on objects too. So he grabs one of the concepts and applies it to one of the clubs. That's how all the blind goblins you see are dead. He then finally destroys a strange orb-like object, known as the dungeon core, and the system window promptly congratulates him for passing the practical test of the lower dimension special examination. Ban Yoo-won lets out a huge sigh of relief, wondering if this means he can finally go home. But to his dismay, the system informs him that he will be transferred to the dormitory. The place he was sent to wasn't home. It was a world he had never seen before, a place called Union Academy. As he lands on the ground, another system window congratulates him on passing the practical exam and becoming a provisional student. The system then informs him to wear the assigned uniform properly and attend the interview, making sure to wear the Union Academy uniform with pride. Of course, Ban Yoo-won is cursing his rotten luck once again. He had finally been accepted into one of the universities back home, but now he's stuck wearing a school uniform all over again. Not that he has any options. Begrudgingly, he quickly puts on the uniform and strides out, ready to give these people a piece of his mind. At the very least, he's thinking of demanding compensation for the transportation mess they put him through. But all of his frustration vanishes when he spots an absolute beauty in glasses sitting at the reception counter. Ban Yoo-won hesitates to approach her, wondering if she might be an alien with green skin like the goblins he just fought. But, alien or not, she's undeniably stunning. Once the lady notices him, she greets Ban Yoo-won as if she had been expecting him. She introduces herself as the professor of magic combat at Union Academy and expresses her delight to see him there. First, she congratulates him on passing the practical exam, and then asks if he knows how extraordinary his test results were, because he has caught the full attention of the entire faculty. Of course, Ban Yoo-won has absolutely no clue what she's talking about. Meanwhile, the professor continues, explaining that he's the first student in 500 years to create a new artifact during the evaluation. But our boy isn't exactly vibing with all of this praise. After all, he was dragged here without knowing anything and almost died in the process. The professor, however, is all smiles, thrilled beyond measure. She explains that his case is exceptional, even beyond what was expected from the special examination. Meanwhile, Ban Yoo-won is mentally tuned out, wondering when he'll finally get a chance to leave this academy. But then his eyes land on something strange outside, which is a massive pillar. He curiously asks the professor about the name of that pillar. She explains that the pillar is the very reason Union Academy was established. The academy exists to raise students with the greatest talents across all dimensions and help them reach the top of the tower. This, she says, is the ultimate aspiration of Union Academy and the final hope shared by all dimensions, to conquer the Dungeon of Dungeons, the origin of all mysteries and dangers in this world, known as the Tower of Babel. This revelation hits Ban Yoo-won like a truck. The Tower of Babel, everything his grandpa used to talk about, the stories he'd heard growing up, it's all here, right in front of him. Even though Ban Yoo-won is thrilled by the revelation, there's one thing he still doesn't fully understand. They called it the Dungeon of Dungeons, so does that mean strange monsters have taken over the tower? But whatever the case, a smile spreads across his face, because he realizes the glory of his family, and everything from his ancestors will be revived once again. At that moment, he makes his decision to enroll in Union Academy. Thanks to the professor's special treatment, he's sent back home temporarily. After gathering his whole family and explaining everything that just happened, he prepares for his enrollment with renewed determination. Fast forward to his return, inside the lower dungeon of Union Academy in the Hobgoblin Cave, we meet Ban Yoo-won again. This time, he's completely obliterating the poor goblins out of existence, wielding his powerful enchanted gun with ease, the results of his training and newfound powers. The legend of his family begins anew, and Ban Yoo-won is just getting started. Now that we know how Ban Yoo-won reached this point, it's time to dive deeper into his abilities. You see, at first, he thought his power was limited to language, but after encountering various goblins, he began to seize concepts like demon, life, flesh, murder, and even shooting. This all changed dramatically with the Babylonian Code, an ability that lets him absorb, verbalize, and manipulate the very concepts of all objects around him. Whenever he defeats an enemy, Ban Yoo-won can acquire concepts that he can recognize. The more concepts he acquires, the stronger he becomes. For example, in his first dungeon, the Blind Goblin Cave, he seized several concepts from the goblins and imbued one, demon, into a club, strengthening it into a weapon. That club is now infused with ghastly energy and has become the first artifact created by Ban Yoo-won. At his command, the club reveals its true form, transforming and acting autonomously as a weapon. He hugs his new buddy so hard that it makes him blush, all thanks to this little guy, who helped our boy score some great evaluation results. Next, he decides to sort through all the concepts he has got. That's when he notices something among the concepts he snagged from the monsters, a brand new concept called soul. At that moment, his little club starts begging him to share this concept. My guy happily agrees, not just with the soul concept, but he also throws in some life ghosts and spirits. He quickly summons the concepts and embeds them into the club. The combined concepts create perfect harmony, causing a transformation in the artifact. The ghost and beast concepts automatically merge, resulting in an amazing synergy that goes way beyond their current potential. Thanks to the transcendental fusion, Ghost Beast 10 has been completed, and a snake known as the Ghost Beast appears before him. Honestly, I have no idea how his powers are working exactly, but I'll just pretend I do. As fierce as this beast looks, it turns out to be just a little snake that emerged from combining the ghost and beast characters, giving life to this new creature known as the Ghost Beast. Ban reaches out to touch it, but when he sees the snake's reptilian face, he hesitates. The snake seems to sense this and starts to look a bit sad. Eventually, Ban musters the courage to rub the snake's head, and the little fella quickly wraps itself around our boy's hand, and Ban even gives him a name, Eve. Before heading back, they decide to check out the growth stats. From what he's experienced so far, life seems to be a concept similar to a level in a game, while flesh represents physical stats. He's still puzzled about why the soul stat is so high. He starts to wonder if abilities like all-seeing eyes and all-hearing ears are somehow related to his language skills. In any case, he decides it's time to return. Once he hits the yes button, he begins to teleport to the Union Academy entrance ceremony. Once we arrive at the Union Academy auditorium for the entrance ceremonies, the whole place is buzzing with new students. In the middle of all the excitement, our boy pops in, catching everyone's attention with his unexpected entrance. He's a bit startled by the sheer number of people around him, but he quickly activates his all-seeing eyes. These special eyes let him read everything depending on his proficiency, allowing him to understand the aura and spirit of his surroundings more deeply. Just as he thought, unlike him, who entered through a special admission from a lower dimension, the regular students who came through the normal process look really strong, even at first glance. As he scans the crowd to find his seat, a giant, ugly bastard suddenly appears in front of him and asks if he's from the lower dimension. He warns our boy not to wander around and to stay out of his sight. My guy just waves them off and starts walking his own path to avoid any commotion. It's clear that those who came in through the regular process have high opinions of themselves and look down on him because he's from a lower dimension. Even here, the ones with power and strength are looking down on those beneath them, which isn't so different from his home planet Earth. He wonders if this attitude is the same everywhere in the world where these people live. Suddenly, someone calls out his name and tells him to come here to sit. As he approaches, he notices only 4 seats, with 3 people already occupying them. He wonders if this is where the special admission students from lower dimensions are supposed to sit. This whole setup is practically screaming racism to him. When he uses his eyesight skills to assess these people's abilities, what he sees completely boggles his mind. Not only are these guys powerful, but they've got enough strength to wipe the floor with the regular students. The blonde guy sitting in the first seat turns out that he already knows our boy. He's the handsome roommate Ban met at the dorm before the entrance ceremony, though their first meeting was a bit unusual. When Ban first entered the dorm room, this blonde dude actually pulled a sword on him. But before things got messy, Ban quickly reminded him that they're both freshmen, which means they're roommates. Blondie apologizes for his earlier behavior, admitting he'd just finished a practical evaluation, so his nerves were a bit on edge. He asks if Ban's okay, but judging by Ban's sweaty face, it's clear he's not feeling great at all. He is, however, more captivated by how this blonde dude literally looks like a prince from a fairy tale, though he's got quite the temper. Still, considering Blondie apologized first, maybe he's not such a bad guy after all. They sit together and chat about their experiences. When Ban shares his story about fighting blind goblins, Blondie can't help but make fun of him, saying even a new recruit with basic training could take down a goblin easily. Naturally, this annoys Ban, who mutters to himself about how this guy is 100% oblivious. Speaking of fights, Ban suddenly remembers he needs to wash his uniform. Without thinking much of it, he starts pulling off his shirt, and the moment his six-pack abs come into view, Blondie goes completely bonkers with embarrassment at the sight of such a chiseled, manly body. When Ban looks at him, Blondie quickly turns his head away to avoid any awkward eye contact, which creeps Ban out a little. In the present, the moment is still filled with tension, but then Ban waves hello to the other 2 ladies sitting in the adjacent seats. One of them has pink hair and looks absolutely phenomenal, with her toned assets and long hair that perfectly complements her cat-like eyes. Then there's the white-haired girl, and the first impression she gives is anything but pleasant. Ban actually recoils a bit in fear because her deep black eyes are so intimidating that he has to turn his head away. As he does, the creepy white-head lady stares at the white snake wrapped around his hand and asks him what it is. Ban introduces his little friend as Eve, and all 3 of them instantly warm up to the adorable creature. Blondie then curiously points out that this snake used to look like a club, so he's curious how it transformed so drastically in just a few days. The white-haired girl, who seemed intimidating at first, actually turns out to be pretty chill. She introduces herself as Dak Goyun, the daughter of a martial artist. She then asks Ban for his name, and he promptly introduces himself, following up with a curious question about whether she can shoot energy blasts using her martial arts. Of course, the other 3 snicker at his ridiculous remark, but Dak Goyun notes that his understanding isn't entirely wrong, which gets Ban even more intrigued. The pink-haired lady introduces herself as Ruchel, and Blondie finally shares his name, Light. Suddenly, Ban spots Professor Yumina in the crowd. Light asks if Ban had also had a consultation with her. Right at that moment, a light starts to shimmer above their heads. When they look up, they realize the auditorium ceiling is opening. A booming voice fills the space, so loud that it feels like their heads are going to split apart. The intense pressure is overwhelming, making it hard for them to even raise their heads. The ominous voice announces the beginning of the entrance ceremony for the 2557th Union Academy class. When we finally look up at the sky, they see a massive eye towering over them. A little while later, we catch sight of Yumina, who looks delighted after hearing the principal's speech, but our party seems a bit unsure about the whole thing. Then Ban casually drops the bomb, asking if that giant eye was actually the principal. His offhand remark totally shocks everyone, and they quickly bombard him with questions about how he could see that eye at all and how he managed to look up. Curious glances fill the room, especially from Dak Goyun, who keeps staring at him with her deep black eyes. It's literally creeping him out. Ban then stutters and twists his story, saying he just felt like there was a giant eye watching them. Anyway, Yumina explains that the being they saw was indeed the principal, and that they probably won't see him again unless a student achieves something special or causes an incident. She's sure that Ban will get a private meeting with the principal, but Ban quips that meeting a terrifying principal is the last thing he wants to do before he dies. Yumina chuckles and tells them that their achievements are also her achievements as their professor, so she encourages them to work hard. This catches Light off guard, and he quickly asks Professor Yumina if she is going to be in charge of them. Yumina puts her cup of tea down and confirms with a smile, officially introducing herself as Professor Yumina. She teaches magical combat and has been assigned as the homeroom professor for their class 11, hoping to work well together for the next 5 years. Light finds it odd because, as far as he knows, lower-tier special admission students are usually assigned to associate professors. Yumina confirms this, explaining that everyone here is such a special student this time that she has been given their responsibility. She decides to give them a piece of advice, which is to be careful of the regular students' jealousy and hostility. Her words carry weight, and Ban can't help but think that the jealousy and hostility she just mentioned aren't just about academic competition. They also refer to physical confrontations and fights between students. Matters outside the internal competition protected by school rules are things even professors can't interfere with. Yumina then tells them that from now on, the 4 of them should stick together since they're all rare special admission students. They'll also form a party to climb the tower together until graduation. With that, Yumina concludes their session and snaps her fingers to bring out a small gift she has in store for everyone. She promises to explain the rules and details after they receive the artifact. Right at that moment, she produces a pendant, declaring it to be their student ID card. She reminds them that they can use this student ID to identify themselves, access all facilities on campus, and even teleport anywhere within the Union realm. Later, once the trio uses their pendants, they are actually teleported outside of the academy building. But they soon arrive back into the building, which makes them let out a heave of disappointed sighs. I'm not sure why they are disappointed, but I will guess that the pendant forced them to teleport back, since they are not allowed to go outside yet. Anyhow, Light adds that they'll need to keep their student IDs on them if they want to enter the tower. But then the cat girl asks why Ban was left behind alone. Light says he has no clue, but the black-eyed girl suggests that maybe the principal sensed Ban's presence too. She suspects that out of all the students, he was the only one who could look directly at him. So there is a possibility that the principal also felt the presence of Ban as well. The scene then flashes to a little while later, where Yumina is on a phone call. She tells the caller that they were just about to have a tea party, but it looks like they'll have to cancel because the principal wants to meet with him. A bit later, we see Ban's terrified and anxious face. He's literally sweating his balls at the thought of having a private meeting with the principal on the first day, even though he hasn't caused any trouble. The principal instructs him to look directly at him because his true form is not here. Ban finds out his principal is talking through a doll. The principal asks him to address him as his master and decides to explain why he called our boy for a meeting. Usually the master tries not to interfere with the students' growth, and if his students are weak, he leaves them as they are. If they are strong, he lets them stay strong. He further says he doesn't care if any of his students die in the tower or end up surviving to one day gain glory. He then reveals that he is only chasing one goal, which is to witness someone who reaches the end of the tower with his own eyes. With a harsh tone, the master makes it clear that everything is meaningless to him other than seeing someone reaching the very top of the tower. The protagonist becomes silent for a second after hearing all of this, and then questions what he means by meaningless. Ban then also recalls his grandpa's words and understands that the tower has existed since the time of his ancestors, and the Ban family is determined to take back the tower as well. The protagonist knows he's ready to achieve all the glory and strength, even if it requires sacrifices like his own life. He remains determined to conquer the tower, but wonders why the professor and other students are chasing after the tower's end. He then asks this mysterious man why he comes all the way from other dimensions to climb the tower and wonders what the tower really is. The master thinks his answer through properly and reveals that the tower is a gateway to the divine. It's a challenge. Ban remains confused, but his master assures him he has no reason to interfere with the student's hard work, but he's thinking about making an exception this time by helping our boy. Of course, Ban doesn't understand what he's saying. The master points the doll's hand towards the protagonist and tells him he has great potential. Seeing his capabilities, the principal decides to make some efforts to help the boy prepare for his journey to climb the tower. Ban questions what kind of preparation he is talking about. The principal shares that the privileges our protagonist holds for exploration have been increased, and now he can travel to any dungeons easily. The master advises him to increase his skills first before starting his journey to climb up the tower. Ban is surprised to find out he can leave the academy, and the master confirms it once again. After the principal is done with this, he helps the boy teleport back, and before letting him leave, the master advises him to improve his skills again and promises to unlock his next privilege soon if he shows great progress. The next privilege he's getting is solo exploration of the tower. The master hopes they can see each other again and teleports Ban somewhere else. Our boy ends up getting transferred to Professor Yumina's room, and she asks him about the meeting. Ban finds his head on her lap and becomes surprised to see her again. He quickly gets up out of embarrassment. Yumina tells him the master's personality is very strange, and he never likes visitors. She notices his pendant and is surprised to find out he's been given permission to leave the academy as a student. Ban has no idea if it's a big deal and remembers the master advising him to improve his abilities quickly. She tells the boy it really is a huge deal and helps him understand that he can now freely explore dungeons beside the tower and also has the freedom to visit external cities at will. She still doesn't believe a student has so much privilege and tells our boy that with this freedom he can gain a lot of experience and prepare more than others. Ban understands her and is relieved the master wasn't advising him to grow stronger because he's totally weak and lacking behind. He smiles awkwardly. Professor Yumina calls him lucky for the privileges he has gained and shares that it's hard for the teachers to leave the academy at this time since it is the Union Academy. Yumina reveals that everything inside the academy favors students only and can be a hassle for the professors. Our boy understands her, and she helps him learn that with the new privileges he has gained, the protagonist can easily explore dungeons and visit new cities whenever he's free. Yumina shows how envious she is and wishes she could also enjoy snacks whenever she wants. The professor recommends Ban to visit an external city known as Ronica and shares there's an amazing spring temple that's worth a visit. Ban is confused by the professor's sudden change in behavior, and before leaving, he asks if she wants something from the city. After a while, the protagonist starts walking towards the new city. He finds the weather amazing and remembers Professor Yumina's request. She informed him about the famous amazing honeymoon wine that's made by the temple priests. She assigns the protagonist a mission to bring back at least 2 bottles of liquor. Ban still can't believe his professor is asking students to run errands for alcohol. Our boy decides to forget about it and thinks he should be grateful he was able to receive an inventory before he left. Suddenly, he notices an item and remembers it's something he received from his grandpa when he was staying at home just before enrolling at the academy. It's a mysterious bag filled with unknown items. Before Ban was leaving his house, his grandpa asked our boy if he was ready to leave. Our boy assured him he's prepared and questioned if grandpa slept well. His granddad ignored the question and suddenly revealed a bag. Grandpa asked Ban to open it and take whatever he wants. Our boy was confused at first, and as he opened the mysterious bag, he found pure gold inside of it. Ban was unsure, but the grandpa confirmed it was okay for him to take as much as he wants. With a smile on his face, Ban's granddad told him all the treasure they have belongs to their ancestors, who spent their lives finding the Tower of Babel. He confirmed once more that Ban could keep all of them and advised the boy to use everything wisely. The protagonist was genuinely grateful to his grandpa and started tearing up out of appreciation. Ban was unsure about how he's supposed to carry so much stuff, annoying his granddad. That was the concern our boy had before. But since now he has authority over an inventory, the protagonist smiles and calls it super useful. He is able to fit all of his items inside the inventory without any hassle, and since he remembers his grandpa teaching him that gold is a valuable item everywhere in the world, our boy decides to take a few pieces of gold. After he is done with preparations, he finally reaches the city of Ronica and becomes excited to set his first foot into the new world. As he finally enters the huge city, our protagonist finds out that despite being in a completely different dimension, the cityscape looks very similar. He realizes his assumption was wrong as soon as he spots multiple flying vehicles everywhere. He questions how that works and suddenly gets called by someone from behind. A few guards approach him as they notice they've never seen him around the city before. As they get closer, the guards realize our boy is a part of Union Academy, which shocks them. They formally greet the protagonist and introduce themselves as the guards that are responsible for the western boundary of the Academy city. Ban introduces himself as well, and they ask how he was able to freely travel to Ronica. They assume our boy received some kind of permission from the Chancellor. He tells them they are correct, and says he has the permission to go exploring freely. The guards show their gratitude for the hard work the Chancellor of the Academy puts in for them to keep the city peaceful. Ban awkwardly laughs and learns his academy is very influential. Since he is a first-year student, the guards assume he doesn't know much about Ronica City and how everything works, so they offer to help him learn more. The guards tell him they will provide him all the guidance since it's a part of their job, and if he is unable to understand something, he is free to ask them. The protagonist decides to take their offer and points towards the hoverbike. Ban tells them he wishes to get one of these bikes and questions how much a hoverbike costs. With the help of the guards in Ronica City, Ban gets his hands on the hoverbike and starts riding it to make his way back toward the academy. The hoverbike makes our boy feel amazing. He soars through the sky and remembers asking the guards to help him buy one earlier. The city guards were a bit confused and informed Ban that even the normal model of a hoverbike costs around 250,000 ronya, which can be very expensive for a student like him. Ban is surprised to find out it's known as a hoverbike, and doesn't understand how the currency works in this new world. Our boy decides to exchange a gold bar for it instead, not knowing it's worth a lot. The guards end up getting surprised and question how the protagonist was able to get his hands on such a huge gold bar. Ban reveals his grandpa gave it to him, but they don't believe the gold bar is real. Ban learns that even a single gold bar is worth 7,500,000 ronya, and finds it fortunate that he received something so valuable from his grandpa. He thinks about thanking the old man, and as he makes his way back to the academy, our boy notices his pet snake, Eve. He asks about its opinion and shares that he infused the hoverbike with Yo and Gi attributes, turning it into a living artifact similar to Eve. The protagonist decides to name the hoverbike Lilith and hopes both his living artifacts get along with each other. Eve understands him, and while driving around the Babel Tower, our boy thinks his journey was worth it, as he was able to buy liquor for his professor Yumina and even found a sibling for his pet artifact, Eve. After finishing all his tasks, the protagonist smiles and decides to head back to the academy. After delivering the liquor to the professor, our boy finally joins his friends and starts feeling extremely sick. Ace Light gives him a glass of water and expresses his disappointment in Ban. His friend is unable to believe the protagonist ended up coming back hungover after leaving his friends without a word for some random meeting. Ban apologizes and tries to defend himself. He tells them the professor didn't let him leave, and in the end, they both ended up drinking the liquor together. Dogko notices a flower badge on the protagonist's uniform and asks if it's a sign he's going to be representing their group in return for sharing drinks with Professor Yumina. Ban gets confused but thinks Dogko is right. While munching on his food, Aslight realizes they have no choice but to go with the decision since it's from Professor Yumina, who's in charge of them. Dogko shares her opinion and tells everyone she's the only one worthy of representing their group, which shocks both Aslight and Ban. She tells them it's because she's the strongest among all four of them. Dogko asks Ban about his opinion, but Aslight intervenes and makes it clear to her that all four of them are equals. He thinks she's putting it in a strange way and decides to clear her misunderstandings regarding what she just said. Aslight says her attitude and arrogance will be horrible for their future tower climbs and tells her he does not believe she is the strongest in the group. Dogko smiles as she finds it funny hearing equal comrades coming from someone who asked Professor Yumina if it's possible to climb the tower alone. She thinks there's no equality in that either. Acelight becomes embarrassed and tries to make excuses. Ban and Ruchel remember he really did ask such a question of the professor. Aslight awkwardly tells both of them he just asked it out of curiosity and assures them he wants to be in a party with all of them. Ban starts to feel hopeless and sees animosity building up before their morning class begins. He now understands that he should have planned everything out in advance. Ban knows their group is going to experience a tough start. Despite having no particular reason to lead his group and become the president, our boy now understands the reason why his professor chose him out of everyone. It's because Aslight is oblivious most of the time, but has a strong sense of pride. Dogko, despite being incredibly strong, is bound to make a lot of enemies because of her self-centered attitude. Ruchel has a passive attitude, but she lacks the personality to lead the group. Ban sighs as he finds out the real personality of special admission students. Our boy tells the whole group to calm down and hear him out first. Ban thinks that, in his opinion, the leader doesn't need to be the strongest among the four of them and says it's better if they are weaker. Dogko doesn't understand what he's trying to say. Ban helps her understand that if the class president is the strongest person, they are surely going to make decisions on their own, and someone who has the responsibility to unite the class shouldn't do that. His party members hear him out, and the protagonist tells them the leader of their group needs to be someone who is able to offer good solutions for everyone, and it's also important for him to be in the middle of the group. Ban says he has the most easygoing personality, so in his opinion, he is the only one worthy of becoming the class president. Dogko doesn't agree with him, but since Ban has already been chosen by the professor to be the class president, she decides to go along with his reasoning for the time being and lets him off the hook. Our boy thanks her for understanding and feels relieved. Dogko tries to be honest, and with a cold expression, she tells everyone she only wishes to lead the protagonist. Our boy doesn't understand what she's trying to say. Dogko tells them there are a few things she doesn't agree with, but since she wants to get what she desires, she is willing to accept someone as unnecessary as her classmates as well. Acelight and Ruchel are a bit shocked to hear this. Dogko hopes they can see each other again and leaves. Our boy tries to anxiously calm down his roommate and becomes a bit disappointed after experiencing such a morning on his first day of school. Ban becomes tired and questions why a simple school morning feels like he's on a battlefield. The protagonist decides to give himself a break and understands that it will take time for him to resolve the issue of pride among the group members. Ruchel asks Ban about something. She excitedly questions if he still has the cute snake he showed them earlier and tells our boy she wishes to at least touch it once. Ban realizes the academy is filled with multiple challenges, and in his first lesson as the class president representing everyone in a room filled with many unique individuals, our boy ends up facing a new difficulty as one of the students challenges him in a fight to see if the leftover students are skilled. At the training ground, Ban stands with his group as they all face the special students. The professor decides to start the first lesson with some light sparring and asks the students about their opinions. Class 11's special students start acting insane and demand a sparring session against the leftover students, which include the protagonist. They're all mad and don't believe the professor chose our boy as the class representative. The special students try to challenge Ban. Seeing them riled up, our boy feels awkward. Acelight learns that the Union Academy assigns students to different classes based on their skills and abilities. He realizes the students of the special class already seem to hate Class 11 for some reason. Ban anxiously shares that it's most probably because he's wearing the flower badge that's provoking all of them. Erecto, a muscle-headed student, notices the flower badge our boy received from Professor Yumina and feels mocked by the protagonist. The musclehead grits his teeth in anger seeing Ban wearing it in front of him and chooses to never acknowledge the protagonist. Erecto starts screaming and demands a sparring match against Ban. He asks the professor and ends up getting permission easily. The professor asks our boy to come forward as he is going to face Erecto in a sparring match. Professor Yumina checked on her students from her office and was surprised to see what was happening. She found it ridiculous that her pupils were having a joint session with the Academy's special class on the very first day. To make matters worse, the first period happened to be the brutal, comprehensive, practical combat subject. Special admission students from lower dimensions can't possibly spar against an upper dimension being. Someone higher up must have scheduled the curriculum with this twisted prank in mind. Professor Yumina could sense malice in this setup. The associate professor in charge of the lecture seemed a little too forceful when he called Ban Wuyan's name up to the arena to spar with Erecto. The young man must have felt something fishy with the whole thing too. So, he raised his hand, concerned for his well-being as his combat skills were still lacking. He won't really gain anything from the match other than injuries. In response, the associate professor deducted 3 points from his point total. The bald bastard did not accept his concern as a valid excuse to not spar. Ban got the vibe that the instructor was just trying to drag him out to be humiliated in front of everyone. He continued to argue for his right to withdraw, citing that he was accepted as a special admission student because of his unique ability and not his combat skills. Ban asserted that it would make more sense to assess his capabilities through another method instead of forcing him to fight. The bald freak could not hold it anymore. A mere student was schooling him verbally, and Ban is not the type to back down when he's in the right. Angry and frustrated, the bald freak deducted another 5 points from his total. Left with no other choice, Ban surprisingly proposed a counteroffer. He accepted the sparring match but insisted that they use the rest of the week as preparation for the proper fight 7 days from now. Ban firmly believes that if he can just get a week's worth of prep time to get into top shape, he can wipe the floor with whoever the higher dimension students bring out. His bold proclamation cast an eerie silence all over the area. At first, the Class 1 students refused to believe the shameless proposal they just heard. The audacity of a lower dimension creature to talk big when it's obvious that his ability is at rock bottom was ridiculous. There was a single student who seemed particularly interested in Ban's daring proclamation. The kid was practically making an enemy out of the entire special class by himself. Baldy shook in frustration as the lower student kept ignoring his orders, even setting the schedule as he pleased. Ban did not respect the belligerent alien at all. That guy's not even a full professor. Ultimately, his gambit succeeded, and he managed to buy himself a week's worth of prep time for a spar with Erecto. News about the official sparring match between students from the special class and Class 11 next Tuesday quickly spread like wildfire. The whole academy will be able to watch it broadcast live. Baldy was practically saying that he doesn't want normal humiliation. He wants to make Ban's demise a big spectacle. Associate Bald Freak ominously warned Ban to give it his all and show his abilities, or else Ban could not be bothered to give a fuck. He looked past Baldy and waved his hand in greeting towards Erecto. Ban flashed a confident smile and expressed his excitement for their fight. Erecto was not really the chatty type. Ban just wanted to confirm something through their little interaction. He managed to take a peek at Erecto's stats, which were terrifying. Thanks to the eyes of infinite reading, his vision allows a deeper understanding of the target's aura and spirit. As expected of the special class student, Erecto was a beefcake. His life and body stats are simply outrageous. But even so, Ban did not feel too bothered. He has gotten used to seeing his classmates' stats. Compared to them, he and Erecto are nothing. Ban has a lot of grinding to do to climb the tower with his lower dimension comrades. As he stepped out of the stage, Ban was confused by the gloomy look on Light and Ruchel's faces. Their eyes were focused on Dako as she did some stretches to warm up. Unlike her class president, Dako specializes in combat, and she's not afraid to cause some damage. She taunted the arrogant bastards to face her if they were curious about the skills of a special admission student. Dako Yan really is built different. She's probably the strongest person that Ban's all-seeing eye had scanned with S and double S tier traits across the board. Dako laid down her invitation, and not a single special class student stepped up to the plate. They just stood around in silence, obviously scared to go against someone who seemed strong. Even the associate professor felt the weight of her challenge. Everything was pretty much going according to what Ban thought would happen. His eyes of infinite reading can't fully grasp the extent of Dako's power. There's no way that the students of Class 1 would miss her suffocating aura. Dako continued to goad the cream of the crop students to grow some balls and show some confidence. She singled out Erecto in the middle of the crowd, and the stone-bodied brute started sweating nervously. Seeing that Erecto's not the type to hold back against her class president, Dako was hoping to get the same treatment so she could crush Erecto's bulging ego. Poor Erecto just wanted to do some unpunishable bullying. He wasn't expecting a challenge by some death god. If he tries to save face and back down from Dako's provocations, Erecto would be done for. He will lose his girth, beaten and injured by his own people, unable to recover in just a week. That ending won't work for Ban, so he hurried into the arena to get Erecto out of Dako's crosshairs. He reasoned that since he was sparring with the Rocky Brute next week, Dako would have to wait for her turn. Ban knew that she was just trying to fight back against the unfair treatment they'd been suffering. He's determined to prove his worth with his own abilities from now on. They can't rely on Dako's raw power all the time, after all. The mysterious Dako chuckled. She thought Ban was just a guy reliant on tricks, but he might have a bit of manliness in him. So, instead of Erecto, Dako wanted another challenger to face her in the square. She kept on asking the silent crowd for anyone who would like to step up, receiving no response. Seeing as she won't get a decent sparring partner was troublesome, Dako sighed in defeat and turned around. She called the special class all bark and no bite bitches. Now that a real threat had presented itself, all they could do was grovel on the ground. Her comrades awkwardly smiled at her wild provocations. The special class scumbags gritted their teeth and trembled in frustration at their incompetence. That was until a special student who hated being called a dog chimed in. A man with broad shoulders, blonde hair, upward horns, and a golden aura stood out from the crowd. He argued that the weak and foolish are the dogs who band together in packs. They growl and pretend to protect their little groups. He thinks it's amusing. Both Dako and Ban could sense that Blondie was no joke. If you look closer, you will see that even among the stacked special class, he seems to be on another level. Light recognized the guy as Ortima, the ruler of the Kedius dimension. Ban had no idea what any of those words meant. Thankfully, Light explained that excluding the Union, there are 10 dimensions with the highest hierarchies. Ortima, right here, hailed from a family that rules over one of the higher dimensions, Kedius. He's practically a representative of how strong the new generation of the top 10 families is. Silence filled the arena once more. This time, everyone can't take their eyes off the matchup. Ortima asked the professor to bring something out, and the spineless bald bastard nervously stumbled around. He eventually managed to take out a recording device to film the fight. In this world, everything is shared on the intranet. Seeing as the intranet is basically the internet from Ban's previous world, he excitedly opened his smartphone. Simply put, companies and educational institutions have set up a network for information exchange. As someone who came from a lower dimension, he couldn't believe that higher beings were actually using something akin to the internet. It did not take Ban long to find the live channel streaming the looming fight. The live stream had a crisp and smooth quality from the angle above. It was plain to see that the associate professor was hell-bent on embarrassing the special admission students in front of as many people as possible. With Dako on the floor, it's unlikely that Baldy gets what he wants. Standing in front of one another, two supremely talented students gauged each other's auras. Ortima was supremely confident in his skills, and Dako saw her opponent as a complete noob. She took to her stance and conceded the first move for free as a handicap. The prideful heir to the dimensional empire did not like that one bit. He loathed being called a noob, and he wanted to wipe Dako's arrogance away. For his first attack, Ortima manipulated his magic power with precision and commanded his enemies to kneel. The spell danced around the air while Dako maintained her stalwart form. Ortima's power was so wild that it managed to reach the special admissions bench. As soon as Ban felt the power behind the spell, he buckled in terror. Whatever Ortima was wielding was an entirely different power than what Ban was used to. To visualize, it was like water flowing from high to low. It is suffocating. It takes the air out of your lungs. Everything around Ortima's space felt the condensed form of the law of nature. They were being forced to kneel before a stronger creature as if it were the most natural thing in the world. The most appropriate explanation for Ortima's power is the ability to distort natural law. Light was surprised to hear Ban figure out the principle behind such a complex ability in one glance. As for Rachel, she wasn't faring well. The young lady hid behind Ban while clinging to his arms. Her eyes were transfixed on the other fighter in the arena, Dako Yeon. As a response to Ortima's nature-distorting power, Dako unleashed her energy, forming a dancing array of pure darkness. With one smooth and decisive wave of a hand, her power tore through Ortima's spells, shattering its effects in one fell swoop. Freed from the suffocating effect of Ortima's orders, the crowd went crazy. Even Ban could not fathom just how powerful Dako really is. She merely raised her energy, and that was enough for her to turn the tables. Ortima laughed, pleased to see that his opponent had some skills to give him trouble. Meanwhile, Dako was disappointed at how easy it was to neutralize Ortima's power and his ridiculous horns. Blondie raised his hand, confidently starting off the second round with a different offensive plan. Dako quickly caught wind of the movement and responded by rapidly charging in, pushing her speed to the limits. All that momentum was accumulated and channeled through a kick to the stomach. Ortima foolishly thought that the enemy would let him get 2 full spells out without interruption. Unfortunately for him, Dako is a veteran fighter. She knows her stuff. Against her attacks that increased in damage the closer they hit, Ortima had to use both hands for defense just to minimize the pain. While he was still reeling, Dako seemingly teleported behind and continued with her playful taunts. Slowly losing his head, Ortima swung behind him only to hit nothing but air. Everything had been going according to Dako's game plan. As expected, the movements of the special class's best bet were laughably stiff and clumsy. Dako reckoned that someone must have spoon-fed Ortima everything he had, resulting in a sloppy fighter. At this point, the young master was just seeing red out of anger. He attacked like a wild animal, scratching and clawing away without making contact. Light could not believe his eyes. One of their classmates was actually overwhelming Ortima, the ruler of Ketius. That must mean Dako Yan is an entirely different beast. Ban noticed that Ortima must have been used to suppressing his opponent's movements. From that point, he can probably defeat anyone with his ability to distort natural law. But against a real seasoned fighter, all his cards were useless. At this point, the ruler of Ketius looked a lot more like a training dummy being thrown around so freely. Against someone impossible to dominate and suppress, Ortima is like a helpless child. Ban watched the fight with his eyes of infinite reading activated, and found that Ortima had monstrous powers and physical abilities, but had never trained his body. Dako is dominating a dimensional ruler, and Ban is grasping every principle of the battle in real time. Light was starting to realize that his comrades were both monsters in their own right. The sparring session had long since turned into an endless brawl, with Ortima being forced to defend at all times. To someone like him, being forced into this position was more insulting than just being defeated in one shot. His little lapse of focus to cater to his pride left a hole wide open for Dako to exploit. She was starting to grow tired of Ortima's delusional words. Maybe if she cut it off, they could just fight in peace. Much to her surprise, Blondie called upon the power of thunder. Dako quickly reacted upon sensing danger, dodging to the side. Ortima started throwing an uncontrolled temper tantrum. Forget about the sparring session. He wanted to freaking kill Dako right then and there. School rules be damned. She could feel that he meant it too. The bastard was just that crazy and butthurt. Hearing a spoiled young master talk about death and killing did not sit right with Dako. Those are not concepts that a kid like Ortima should speak about so lightly. To demonstrate her disapproval, she made the dark energy looming around her body dance. They twisted and turned as they coalesced between her hands. Ortima and Dako went all in as they clashed with both of their most destructive weapons in hand. Before the devastating explosion of raw power unfolded, Professor Yumina finally arrived to clean up the mess with a clap of a hand. As soon as her hands touched each other, the arena was filled with illusory flowers from every angle. The flowers killed off the destructive energy of both combatants. The white tiles they were standing on had turned into a prairie of pink and white blossoms. Both Dako and Ortima were confused as to what was happening. Professor Yumina asserted that the academy doesn't encourage students to fight for their lives. She would prefer to see them go all out and use all that aggression against the monsters in the tower instead. Under the light of the sunset, the arena and even the stands were filled with Professor Yumina's power. She pointed one finger up, and the flora started rising as if they had lives of their own. Everyone just looked around in awe of such a beautiful use of magic. Ban considered how complex the technique must be if the flowers were illusions. They looked like real flowers, and they had a strong and fragrant scent too. Ortima clicked his tongue before turning around and walking away. He might be a special student, but that doesn't give him the pass to disobey a respected professor. Dako, on the other hand, praised her class advisor for being strong. Professor Yumina smiled back, and she hurriedly looked away. As soon as she got back to the special admission bench, Ban asked how it felt to be up there. He also thanked her for showing him such an insightful fight. Ruchel had finally reached her limit and fell against Ban's back. Seeing how wildly she was trembling out of fear, Ban asked if Ruchel was still afraid of Dako. He actually found her behavior quite cute. From a distance, Professor Yumina can be heard and seen admonishing Associate Professor Farrell for today's disastrous first lecture. She did not approve of any sparring sessions of some kind. Not only was it allowed, but it was also left to escalate without limits while the supposed instructor watched on the sidelines. The bald bastard had lost all his arrogance in front of a real professor calling him out so openly. Professor Yumina will not settle with just an apology. She wants justice for her students. She also noticed something out of whack earlier. So Professor Yumina walked towards Ban. She used her finger to fix the flowery brooch on her student's chest. As the class president, she reminded Ban that dignity is everything. Part of that is never wearing the badge of honor upside down. The dumbasses of the special class saw this, and all of them nearly had a heart attack out of envy. With that, Professor Yumina made her exit to take care of other faculty business. Sure, the kind professor came to stop the fight from getting too wild. But with her last act, she managed to stir up more trouble for Ban. Most of the boys see him as a fly trying to get close to the goddess of flowers. Today's events quickly made their way to the intranet through forum posts. News about Dako Yeon, a special admission student capable of dominating Orduma in a spar, was a hot topic. Given that Orduma is projected to be the top student of the year, there's a lot of buzz around his actions. The recording of the fight itself was posted by Associate Professor Farrell. In a span of a day, most people have seen how pathetic Orduma looked as he was forced to act like a turtle to weather Dako's attacks. The intranet loved Dako. They loved her look and strength even though she was only a freshman. There was also a clip of Ban bargaining for some prep time and succeeding. They dubbed him the bargaining master. Fast forward to the end of the recording. Everyone's goddess, Professor Yumina, de-escalated the conflict and fixed Ban's badge. The intranet mob saw how she interacted with Ban Woo-yeon, and every type of hate comment was uttered in multiple posts and comments. The special admission comrades just became aware that the whole world was talking about them at this point. Dako found all the internet slang strange while Light was literally dying. Dako also found it odd that people keep talking about Orduma like he's the top prospect of the year. Among the special class, she sensed at least one person more capable than everyone else. A witch with blue hair. Dako was expecting Ban to notice that student, but he was too focused on the fight. Incels also managed to find Ban's name, and they've been spreading it all over the school's community page. Noobs doesn't have the balls to challenge Dako, so they are focusing their frustrations on him instead. Light interrupted the chatter to ask why Ruchel was sitting so far away from the rest of them. After the sparring class, Ruchel seemed to have grown even more distant from the group. She can't speak her mind, and she can't say what's wrong. As far as Ban knows, Ruchel was just terrified of Dako. It's hard to imagine how they managed to share the same room. Ban reckoned that the young lady was just having a hard time socializing. So, he pulled something out of his inventory that could possibly cheer everyone up. It was a special elixir jam enriched with Ban's abilities. It holds the concentration from thousands of fruits to promote overall growth and stats. Light and Dako curiously looked at the vibrant jam. Ban could already tell that they would love this stuff and asked for some bread. While Ruchel was sulking away and eating by herself, she caught a whiff of the special elixir jam. Her dark expression lit up with how pleasant the scent was. In Ban's hands were plates of jam-covered bread glistening perfectly. Light and Dako gave it a taste test, and it almost turned into a Food Wars scene. If you know, you know. Inside their mouths, the flavor of 1,000 fruit extracts mingled harmoniously. They've never had something so good before. It was not just good, it was otherworldly. Dako is a fan of sweets from the Central Plains, but this jam and bread combo is in a different league. Ban then called Ruchel to join their table so she could try the jam too. The hunger and curiosity in her mind were stronger than the fear she felt for Dako. Finally, the young lady pulled her chair close to Ban and politely asked for a jam sandwich too. As soon as she bit into the perfect dessert, Ruchel's worries melted away in bliss. She called it the essence of the fruit itself, the fruitiest fruit ever. Light was curious about how Ban made something so delicious with his ability, and Dako desperately wanted more. After a few more rounds of unlimited jam sandwiches, Dako felt as though she was eating something way too precious for free. Ban asserted that making the jam wasn't that expensive. He was just glad to share good things with his team. They can just consider this a return favor for the kindness they've shown him. But Dako is an oddball. She stood up, yelling that she had finally made up her mind. In return for the jam sandwiches, she vowed to personally teach Ban martial arts. In the middle of an old-school training room, a teleportation gate opened. Ban and Dako stepped out of the light. Being new to all forms of dimensional travel, Ban struggled quite a bit. At least they found a space big enough to train properly inside the academy. The room must be a reflection of the user's preferred environment. Ban was dragged out of his lunchtime to come here, so he was eager to see what Dako had in store for him. She responded by picking up a wooden sword and swinging it around at frightening speeds while warning him not to move carelessly. Dako started the lesson by assuming her stance and driving the wooden sword forward with intent. She aimed the tip on his face, and the momentum behind the stab was palpable. The blade stopped inches away from his face as he imagined just how much damage he would have sustained if she attacked for real. Thankfully, this was just her demonstration of the concept of thrust. It is a move without a shred of hesitation and doubt. It's hard to believe that a human can perform such a terrifying, piercing strike. However, for a brief instance, Ban discovered something in Dako's attack. His eyes of infinite reading desperately focused up, eager to see through what made the attack so powerful. Just like he thought, hiding in her movements was a new concept. It was the concept of penetration. He was supposed to learn swordsmanship, but all he could focus on was the concept of penetration. Dako resumed her crash course lesson, forcing him to focus and pay attention. Apparently, thrust doesn't exist in just one form. At higher levels of comprehension, a thrust can be done with anything. For now, they'll be focusing on the most basic and fundamental meaning of a thrust. Once more, she showed a simple and quick attack while keeping her soul student engaged. She urged Ban to focus on how many times he thrust, his angle of attack, what he mimics in his head while performing the thrust, and ultimately, with what force or aura he should thrust. There are basically countless variations, but the ultimate basics are pretty much the same. At the end of the day, it's just a thrust. Ban should be able to learn it, right? Sure, Dako might say that what she demonstrated are the fundamental basics, but her actions showed the level of a master who refined a single concept to its utmost. What she showed was far more profound than just mixing several concepts together. Done with her demonstration, Dako handed the wooden sword to Ban. It's his turn now. He awkwardly prepared and excused his clumsy imitation in advance. Dako was certain that no one could perfectly copy her form from the start. If that's the case, then the years she spent mastering the blade would be meaningless. Before she could finish her thought, an oppressive feeling of the air being pushed away by Ban's thrust stunned her to silence. Seeing the young man grasp the concept of her blade after seeing it just once felt like a sick joke. Ban wasn't satisfied with his first try. He focused up and tried to replicate Dako's form as much as he could. Until now, he's been too focused on just mixing concepts together. He used to think that combining random concepts would be his ultimate path to success, but not anymore. He's starting to realize that he can become so much more powerful by refining what he already has. Thinking deeper, he wondered why he caught the concept of penetration when there were so many other characters for thrusting. It must have something to do with Doko herself. To her, a thrust is an attack that must pierce its target without fail. It's a deadly move meant to snuff life out of your enemies. By his next few tries, Dako had stopped talking altogether. She only spoke up to tell him to stop in the meantime, as there was no need to push his body too hard right from the get-go. As an assignment, Ban was tasked to try and refine what he just learned in a larger space and against an opponent that he could kill. With the training session finished, Ban was assaulted by multiple system prompts. They were notifications regarding his comprehension of concepts like penetration, martial arts, and swordsmanship. He basically raised his stats by swinging a sword a few times. It wasn't some trivial increase, too. His stats actually skyrocketed. With his improved grasp on the concept of movement, his eyes of infinite reading gained some massive points. The concept of penetration was a new addition, and it has already reached 16 points. His swordsmanship progress never rose, no matter how many goblins he killed back in the trial. Yet here it is, shooting up to 20 all at once. Ban's combat abilities have practically doubled overall. Dako is the type of person who can accept her defeat even if it comes unexpectedly. She never would have thought that he would be able to display the essence of the technique, free from the form of a weapon, in just a few minutes. If just showing the tech made it easy to understand and imitate, no one would ever struggle to train for years to master it. Ban's just an anomaly among anomalies. He unexpectedly turned the tables on Dako. He returned the compliment, praising Dako for being such a good teacher that he was able to grasp the concept immediately. Ban wasn't lying either. He really paid attention to her every movement and sensed the profoundness behind each action. It made him wonder if a person could really reach Dako's level. He got so absorbed in the depth of it all that he lost track of time. Dako's maiden heart was starting to get swayed by his thoughtful words. They haven't even known each other for long, yet he says such saccharine things so easily. In any case, Ban would love to learn a lot more in exchange for the elixir jam. Dako teased him a little bit more but also assured him that there was no need to worry. She might have lost in terms of potential today, but she's determined to make up for today's loss. For the first time since they entered the academy, Ban saw the cold and calculating powerhouse smile. They got too into their one-on-one training that the time for the next lecture had already arrived. As they teleported out, Ban smiled at the thought of Dako's pure expression. Back in the halls of Union Academy, Ruchel and Light absent-mindedly head for their next class. Suddenly, a group of higher dimension students deliberately bumped into Ruchel. The Rizzler demanded her attention, and all Ruchel felt was fear. When asked where she was from, she didn't even know how to respond. The alien Rizzler was about to try to make some moves on Ruchel when a hand barred him from getting any closer. Light had come to his comrade's rescue, and the aliens did not like that at all. When Light introduced himself as Ruchel's classmate, the Rizzler nearly spat on his face. Nearly every higher dimensional being sees the lower dimensional scum as low-life bugs who have no right to butt in. Coincidentally, Ban and Dako spawned in the hall where trouble with the Rizzler was brewing. The lecture was about to start, yet their classmates were still hanging around outside. The cowardly aliens quickly scattered away upon seeing an enemy they did not want to piss off. As they left, they spouted empty threats. Finally, the special admission comrades were left alone. The instances of on-campus harassment are just becoming worse. Inside the lecture hall, the professor was yapping about the history of the Union before the Chancellor founded the Academy. Everything started from the moment the tower appeared in the primal dimension. While the lecture continued, some scumbags were busy trying to film Ruchel from afar. It was the same group that harassed her outside the lecture hall. They don't even see her as a person, just a bug trying to climb the tower instead of going for a more suitable job. The Rizzler offered to take Ruchel in to work for his family so she could get pampered every day. They were literally talking about making her a slave and laughing like animals. Light and Ban could hear everything loud and clear. The scumbags weren't even trying to hide their contempt. It made Ban wonder if, no matter what the scale, people would be horrible everywhere. To make matters worse, the professor doesn't even care. While Ban was trying to figure out the professor's stance, Light stood up from his seat to ask for help. Blondie snitched that there were noisy students disrupting the class and making it hard for everyone else to concentrate. The professor took the complaint and shared it with everyone in the class nonchalantly. He did not admonish the annoying bastards at all. It looks like they can't even rely on some professors for help when the discrimination is so blatant. Suddenly, the goons started cursing at Light for standing up and snitching like a fucking idiot. They did not like how good-looking Blondie was. They think he's a show-off. The goons continued talking trash to Ruchel and Light without lowering their volume so everyone could hear their horrible jabs. The verbal assault has driven the sweet young lady to tears and Light to rage. The valiant knight can only take so much. Failing to contain his anger, the pen in his hand broke into two. Light would have made a move right then and there if Ban had not forced him back down his seat to calm down. He was practically telling Light to hold back even after hearing all the horrible stuff from those scumbags. But fighting those guys would just be a pointless action at this point. Causing trouble inside a classroom in the middle of a lecture will only make things worse for everyone. Fortunately, Ban had already set something up to combat discrimination. There's more than one way to solve a problem. One solution happens to involve UnionTube on the intranet. He actually clipped all the horrible stuff coming out of the goons at the back. Those kids can keep laughing like idiots. It would only make them appear more obnoxious on the live stream. All that filthy talk during class will be free for everyone to watch. If you're wondering how Ban was able to set a camera up at a perfect angle, the simple answer was none other than Eve. The trusty ghostly beast carried a small camera and filmed the whole stream. The people on the intranet flocked to the live stream, trashing the goons for spouting a bunch of vile insults. Ban cleverly titled the stream as Union History to subtly stir up public opinion even more. There's just no way he would let those bastards get off easily after making Ruchel tear up. Finally, the Three Stooges were informed about the live stream and tried their hardest to find the camera. When they finally saw Eve, the ghostly beast quickly escaped. The goons started yelling at the special admission students for setting them up. The ruckus of it finally made the professor act out. He deemed the troublemakers' behavior in class as atrocious. He took their names and ordered them to get the hell out. When the Three Stooges did not listen to the professor, he forcefully blasted them out of the lecture hall with magic. The three were given an F for the entire year. At least the professor was somewhat reasonable. But if you ask Ban, he believes that an F for the class is still a bit too lenient. Light agreed. However, according to Ruchel, the punishment was plenty enough. She feels better now, thanks to her classmates standing up for her sake. Ban tried to pass it off like it wasn't a big deal. He is fully aware that he's not as strong as the other three, so he has to imagine some workaround to handle issues. This time it worked out. Ruchel, Light, and Dako looked at Ban with appreciation. They all feel more at ease knowing that such a reliable guy is their class president. The very next day, the group was ambushed by the same Three Stooges who just can't seem to learn their lesson. This time, they singled out Light while Ruchel hid behind Ban. The valiant knight answered their call, meeting the Rizzler and the goons eye to eye, his posture as perfect as ever. Rizzler demanded an explanation for whatever happened yesterday, still referring to Light as a bug. Thanks to the live broadcast, their semester was ruined before it even started. The seniors have also marked them. Their classmates are consciously avoiding getting involved with them. On the sidelines, a professor was just watching the argument involving drawn weapons with a faint smile on his face. Most students and some faculty members simply see lower dimension creatures as subhuman. It's like they're just livestock to them. The Rizzler continued threatening Light with his sword inches from Blondie's face. They wanted him to repeat what he said, so he granted them their wish. Light reiterated that if they want to hear what he has to say, these barbarians must ask politely. Being called barbarians by a bug that they don't even consider human irritated the goons to their cores. Rizzler had a zero-tolerance policy for disrespect, especially coming from a lowly creature of the lower dimensions. Nevertheless, Light continued referring to them as barbarians while he drew his own weapon. The sword the Rizzler was holding was reduced down to the hilt in one slash. The special admission comrades were shocked to see Light act so differently. Ban was bombarded by incessant system pings. Upon witnessing a single casual slash from Light's sword, he managed to discover a new concept. Flowing freely from his radiant sword were multiple concepts refined to a terrifying degree. All Light wanted was for the goons to act more politely, and all they did was continue pushing the virtues of the knight. As soon as Light brought his burning holy blade next to the Rizzler's neck, the poor bastard dropped to his knees, losing control of his body. Light's cheerful attitude was gone. All that was left was a cold and dominating master of the sword. Ban also noticed just how quick and sudden Light's personality shift was. Maybe the sword had something to do with his change. Furthermore, Ban couldn't seem to grasp all the dazzling concepts bursting forth from the blade. At this point, Light looked like a king baptizing his knight. All he wanted was a proper greeting, and he would gladly take his leave. As much as the Rizzler wanted to run away, his legs had already turned jelly because of the pressure he was under. The goons were not the best when it came to reading the room, so they kept calling Light a bug even with his blade resting on the Rizzler's neck. Dako watched from afar, seemingly concerned. Light turned to the professor on the sidelines with a question. He asked what kind of evaluation a group that suddenly attacks their classmates with real swords during class would be. The shady professor cleared his throat and sidestepped the question. Answering that, the academy openly encourages practical sparring. Before he could twist the scenario around, Light made it clear that he never accepted a sparring match. The shady professor acknowledges this, but also claims that Light was the one who pulled out a personal artifact. Light, of course, admits his mistake but insists that he acted only in self-defense in response to an unprovoked attack. Light asked the professor if he would just stand by and take the attack if they exchanged positions. Light asked Shady Yoda how he should have handled the insults and slanders, and Yoda could not think of a reasonable answer. Still, the professor still sided with the goons by saying that he did not see any type of provocation in the first place. The blatant lie from an authority that should be protecting his students pushed Light's temper to the limit. His rage manifested with his sword's blinding glow and energy. It nearly burned the Rizzler right then and there. Light wanted to know if the professor really wanted to go down this dark path. Thankfully, before the situation escalated even further, someone else interfered. Dako stepped in and flicked Light on the forehead to knock him out of his increasingly aggressive daze. When Light opened his eyes back up, it looked like the gentle and cheerful chap had come back. He yelled at Dako for humiliating him with a flick in front of everyone. She lectured him about acting so high and mighty while he swung his sword around. A few more flicks later, Light finally decided to withdraw his mysterious artifact. With the sword in storage, the unsettling energy surrounding Light vanished too. The shady professor walked away from the scene while angrily grumbling about his hatred for arrogant lower-dimension creatures. Ban asked Ruchel if she also thought that they came a little too close to a very dangerous incident. Meanwhile, Dako continued humbling Light. She did not like how he acted while holding a divine object. It represented a hidden true nature. At lunch, Ban played with his food while mulling over some ideas he had. He shared that if they keep going like they usually do, it seems like they won't be treated humanely in the academy. Contrary to Light, Ban consciously tries to steer clear of troublesome elements like racist professors or unprompted sparring matches. Light actually felt terrible for his earlier behavior and was willing to learn how to react to provocation better, like Ban. But if it was up to Ban, he would just leave the provocateurs alone and try to fight the professors directly. Dako was too busy enjoying her jam to care about what people around her were talking about. Ban is still keeping Light under close scrutiny, fearing that he might go berserk. The usual level-headed knight would not have acted so recklessly in front of fellow students and a professor. It felt like equipping that sword triggered a sudden change akin to someone flipping a switch. In all seriousness, Ban outrightly asked if Light could control the dominating power that he displayed earlier. The knight assured him that he could. He would not have passed the entrance exam if he couldn't. Earlier, he just let his anger at the professor's lies take over. He hates liars, but it seems like Aslight over here has a pretty big secret too. For now, Ban chooses to believe that the knight can control that crazy power, and Light promised that he wouldn't cause any more trouble. Dako finished her dessert and chimed in. She actually enjoyed watching Light being controlled by his divine object for a second. While Light hung his head low, the rest of the special admission class just quietly stood over him. Dako turned to Ban and insisted that she was starting to feel the importance of the advice Professor Yumina had given them a few days ago. She warned them to be cautious of the envy and malice of ordinary students. If the group keeps going like they are going, school life is bound to get noisier. If the class representative is thinking of a plan for their future, Dako would appreciate hearing it now. Her respect for Ban has grown a lot, and she puts a lot of importance on his thoughts now. Ban starts wondering and remembers the things he has noticed so far that are bothering him. After spending a few days at the academy and going through school life, he starts contemplating and understands that the mindset of superiority is usually based on a student's birth or inherent strength. The unusual disdain directed at the leftover group and lower dimensions, and an old system that doesn't take the whole matter seriously, are the root causes. However, he's aware there's no way he can do anything about it as an outsider since such things are considered common sense. Ban asks the others if they're aware of the things that are necessary to build an emotional connection or maybe gain the favor of a wide-ranging group. They're all curious about his question, and Light answers it's communication. In Dako's opinion, it's power, but Ban lets them know they're totally wrong. He tells the group they already possess what's important, and gives them a hint by indicating something with his hands. They're all curious about the answer. He shares that it's their looks. Dako is still confused about his plan to share their daily lives by creating a channel. Ban mentions that it's a common method to build a connection with a wider audience on his home planet, Earth. His plan for them is to show the general public a good image they'll build for themselves. The group reaches the training ground, and they all start setting up the necessary lighting and other items for the video shoot. Ban helps Ruchel carry something and helps everyone understand that if they want to create a sense of familiarity in other people's minds, they will need to build and maintain a good image, which, in turn, can grow into admiration and respect for the individuals. Light expresses his confusion and wonders why they're having a sparring match against each other if their goal is simply to build admiration. Dako advises Light to take it seriously and clarifies that they're not staging anything. It's a real sparring match. She exchanges a few punches with the blondie, but he doesn't agree on getting serious all of a sudden and believes Ban is overthinking it. He tries to punch the girl, but she easily dodges. Dako catches him off guard and grabs the blondie by his collar. She picks him up and smashes him onto the ground. Dako believes he'll get serious after this. Ruchel is amazed to see how capable she is while Ban keeps recording everything on his phone. The blondie tries to get up. Dako asks if he's finished already and starts mocking him. She brings up the incident with his sword and believes the blondie got manipulated by his weapon because he's weak. She gives him permission to pull out his artifact, but doubts he can close the gap between them even if he relies on his sword. After hearing all the insults, the blondie starts gritting his teeth in anger and becomes determined to prove her wrong. Ban, while recording everything, encourages the blondie. Ruchel still wonders how sparring and recording their lives will help them fix their school life. Ban assures her his plan will definitely work, but things will take time and effort to change. Once they show the audience how strong and skilled their group is, he believes fewer people will mess with them. Light tries to land a punch on Dako, but she effortlessly dodges all the attacks. Ruchel finally understands the plan as she observes the fight. Light throws a powerful punch at Dako, but she easily avoids the attack. The training ground gets damaged by the attack's power. Ban asks Ruchel to stop overthinking the results and believes she's too gorgeous and shouldn't stress over every little thing. She's surprised to receive a compliment from Ban. In his opinion, Ruchel has a beautiful face, and she will look even more amazing with a smile on her face. Ban believes it's a waste if she keeps frowning all the time because her face is beautiful enough to win anyone. Our boy assures her and suggests they should enjoy the moment for now and leave their worries for later. Ruchel finally smiles and feels strange as she realizes whenever Ban says something to her, it always ends up happening in the end. Dako tries to stop the blondie, but he finally gives up and tries to run away as he asks for Ban's help. Our boy decides to enjoy the moment as well. At the cafeteria, Ruchel finds it hard to finish her food and starts whining about it. Ban takes this opportunity to film her and assures the girl she will get used to it soon. Ruchel gets annoyed and asks why he's filming her. After Ban's suggestion, their group keeps uploading videos of their daily lives to their channel known as Rebellion, and it doesn't take them long to gain a lot of fame. They receive an amazing response. The class keeps making engaging content and receives great feedback from the viewers as well. Ban plans on going live next. The fans are hyped about the live stream and learn the broadcast is going to happen the next day. The viewers remember they will be climbing the Tower of Babel in a day. Seeing the engagement and fan following increasing so quickly, the protagonist and his group are left speechless. Ban is unable to believe it. Ruchel anxiously questions why there are so many people watching them. He shares that they've already achieved the 1,000 subscriber goal in a single day. Light feels embarrassed as he finds out the most viral video on their channel is of him getting beaten up. Professor Yumina notices them and praises the group for their achievements. She shares that the Union Academy is a top dimension of real wonders. No one has ever thought about creating media content. She begins to giggle as she praises their channel and the content they have created. The professor expresses how everything exceeded her expectations. She is surprised to learn such entertainment and connection can be developed with this method. Ban remembers their first viral video, which annoys Light. The professor decides to move forward, and as the first day to enter the Babel Tower finally comes, all the Class 11 members prepare for battle and gear up. The professor asks if they're all ready and prepared to fight. The protagonist finds out he is the only one in a normal school uniform, while everyone else has dressed up and prepared for the fight. Light is aware they'll have to continuously fight and win many battles inside the tower. Dako believes everyone picked clothes that are most comfortable to move in. Ruchel agrees with her and mentions that the outfit she's wearing helps her feel the safest, so it's perfect for a fight. The professor asks Ban if he doesn't mind going with the school uniform. Our boy knows he came from a peaceful world, so he never saw any specific clothes to engage in battles. Ban wants to live his own way, and since he's going to enter a place where he will definitely have to fight for his life, he decides to roll with the academy uniform and assures everyone it's enough for him. Once the professor confirms they are all ready, she decides they should all move forward and helps the class teleport to the Tower of Babel. With a huge beam of light, the whole group reaches their destination. After noticing them arrive, a few students recognize them as the Rebellion. They're shocked to find Ban's group here. Ruchel becomes confused and anxious seeing her surroundings change so suddenly. The professor tells her they have reached the entrance of the Babel Tower. She shares that the tower has been open for quite a while, but classes enter the tower based on their grade level. Ban is surprised to learn they are the first group to enter. The professor explains it's because of their strong visibility. Light notices the bullies from earlier and observes that they are acting differently from when they met before. Ban mentions the bullies are also subscribed to their channel now. Dako points toward Erecto as she notices there are still many students who are glaring at their group with murderous bad intentions. Dako helps Ban remember his duel with Erecto. He's aware they will be climbing the tower today and the sparring will be on Tuesday. He moves forward with his group members and recalls he only has 4 more days left before his match against Erecto. The protagonist becomes determined to reach such a high level his opponent will never be able to achieve. Before they enter the tower, Professor Yumina suggests they should finish the exploration as soon as possible and return before the weekend, but she is aware she doesn't get to decide that. The ones who are climbing the tower need to make this decision. She questions if they are planning to finish the exploration on a specific day. Ban knows his group members are thinking the same thing he has in mind and asks if he can say it. They all let him speak, and the protagonist states it's going to take them 2 nights and 3 days to finish the exploration. He assures the professor they will come back on time, and with this, they decide to enter the tower. Professor Yumina advises them to be careful, and as the whole group moves inside, Ban asks his ancestors to watch him closely. Earlier, during their meeting, the professor asks if our boy is thinking about filming inside the tower. He calls her correct and shares his plan to try and capture the situation inside the tower. He shows the little artifact and shares that it's going to handle all the filming. The little camera bot is a self-operating artifact that the protagonist created in the footsteps of Eve and Lilith. The professor explains that the tower structure changes all the time, so there is no point in recording the insides of the tower. Ban feels disappointed, while Ruchel finds the new artifact adorable and starts playing with it. Light reads the tower manual and learns that the tower's internal structure keeps changing. He doesn't understand what this means. The professor decides to elaborate and tells the group that each floor of the tower is known as a room, and once they are able to defeat the monsters inside that room or overcome other challenges, the tower itself will move the party to the next room. She shares that this unique structural change is known as a shift in the Union Academy. They can find out how much deeper they've gone inside the tower by counting the number of shifts. Our boy is surprised to learn that the tower's room always changes when a shift occurs. She calls him correct and shares that once they overcome the challenges in their room, they move forward and can never return to the same room ever again. Light questions if the challenges and monsters inside the room also change along with it. Professor Yumina answers positively and explains that the monsters that appear in the deeper rooms of the tower are usually different and stronger than the ones before. She tells everyone it's the same for traps as well. Dako, while drinking tea, decides to ask a question. She wishes to know what happens if someone ends up dying while they are climbing the tower. Her question shocks everyone, and Ban suddenly realizes he almost forgot to ask the most important question. The professor recognizes that Dako has asked something critical, but assures them that challengers facing difficulties inside the tower don't actually lose their lives, even if they end up failing. After learning this, the whole group feels relieved, and the professor continues to explain that anyone who ends up actually dying in battle gets transferred to the starting point of the tower. Ban feels disappointed and assumes anyone who dies inside the tower will have to start from the beginning again. The professor mentions the pendant all of them are wearing and tells her students it's able to record the shifts, which means once they re-enter the Tower of Babel, They can easily start from the room they died in. She helps them understand why wearing the pendant is essential for climbing the tower and advises them to never forget it. Ban feels a bit weird seeing the situation resemble a game that has a mid-save function. Blondie thinks it's perfect as they can easily challenge the tower many times once they are revived. Dako asks everyone to stop for a moment and points out that the professor revealed that challengers don't die in most areas of the tower, but that just means there are still exceptional situations where our students can still die. All of them realize there is still a chance they can lose their lives inside the tower. The professor says she is correct and praises Dako for being on point as usual. She confirms that there are still areas in the tower where a challenger can lose their life. At the present moment, inside the Tower of Babel, Class 11 confronts the monsters known as claw scythes. These monsters have the ability to devour and dissolve all the equipment a challenger has, completely disarming them. Light cuts through most of the monsters using his artifact sword, while Dako uses some kind of magic ability to fire red beams, killing the monsters. Our boy finds a flame torch and tries to use his powers to extract the fire from them. He keeps trying persistently, but it doesn't work. Ban questions why he's failing to extract the fire even though the concept is clear to him. He remembers using his powers was easy in other dimensions and wonders why he's facing such difficulty inside the tower. Dako approaches him, and he apologizes for zoning out. She remembers he asked her to buy him some time so he could figure something out, and questions if he was successful. Our boy shares that he tried to see if extracting the flames inside the tower was possible, but he ended up failing to manage anything. Light keeps killing the monsters as they talk. She calls it unfortunate and is disappointed our boy didn't use the terrain of the tower to his will. He gets embarrassed and requests her not to make such predictions about his useless abilities. Out of nowhere, the notorious monster attacks Dako from behind, but the protagonist pulls out his artifact Eve to easily push them back. She's surprised to see Eve, a self-operating artifact, in action for the first time, and asks if a chain is Eve's other form. He answers positively and orders his pet Eve to fight against the monsters. The snake chain takes care of multiple claw scythes at once. Dako praises its capabilities, and our boy shares that he has other strong pets as well, but they are much noisier compared to Eve. She understands he's being considerate, but in her opinion, Ban cannot be as noisy as the other two. Ruchel screams and faces the monsters without any weapons, using her claws to attack. She moves forward with all her might and throws a serious punch. Seeing her fight, Dako comments she's going against the basics of battle, which are usually to avoid the enemy's attention and hide. She's surprised to see Ruchel make such a mess as she fights. Ban learns from his observations that the girl fights using her own style, which is based on instincts. Light and Ruchel keep screaming, and Dako becomes annoyed, questioning if making such a fuss with every swing is necessary. The blondie finishes defeating a few more monsters, and finds out that Room 1 only has claw scythes. He believes they are capable enough to defeat monsters like these. Suddenly Dako notices something coming their way, and quickly advises everyone to keep up their guards. She believes some kind of energy is gathering and assumes a stronger enemy is about to appear at any moment. They all realize it might be an elite final monster for the room. Light gives Ban a heads up, but the protagonist assures him he is already aware. He uses Eyes of Infinite Reading to see through the challenge they will be facing. He and Ruchel try to prepare themselves for what's coming and see the obelisk in front of them. Ruchel doesn't waste a single second and rushes towards the obelisk to smash it into pieces. She lands a strong attack, and in just one blow, Ruchel destroys the magic circle into pieces, leaving everyone shocked. Light praises her as he realizes she didn't even let the elite monster materialize and finish the battle in just one attack. He notices she even received an enhancement core and wonders if such drops are easy to find. Ruchel grabs the core, and all of a sudden, the protagonist notices her hair color. Ruchel's hair has started turning black. Ban gets concerned and points it out for Ruchel so she knows her hair is turning black. He finds out she's using a technique known as Heart Furnace, which lets the user burn emotions as fuel to gain immense power. The Heart Furnace is similar to Berserker. Our boy assumes she loses control once the hair color changes completely, as he recalls what he saw earlier. She pinches his arm and innocently asks if she looked scary while fighting. Ban gives her a wholesome smile and assures the girl she's very reliable and doesn't look scary at all. Ruchel still doubts it, which annoys Dako. She tells her to stop overthinking so much, and assures Ruchel not to worry about losing control over her powers, since she will kill her before Ruchel gets a chance to cause damage. Ruchel becomes more anxious hearing this. But Ban says they can't kill each other, or else they will have to start the exploration from zero if either of them dies. Dako assumes only 3 of them will be climbing the tower if Ruchel doesn't behave properly. She shares her honest opinion that it might be best if she can just climb together with Ban only. Light starts whining about being left out, and our boy questions why the situation is becoming so dramatic. He notices Rukel's sad expression and quickly assures her he can think of something if the time actually comes, and says he is aware of why she's feeling so off, but he lets her know that as the class president, it's his job to find solutions for such problems. Rukel's face lights up, and she starts thanking him for the reassurance. He tries to be humble and thinks it's his job as the class president. Seeing their interaction, Dako becomes jealous and expresses her disappointment to find out Ban is just another ordinary guy since he is falling for someone's appearance so easily. He calls it a misunderstanding and believes his behavior is completely ordinary. Light is surprised to see how relaxed everyone is despite being inside the tower. After the shift is finally over, the whole team reaches room 2. Besides the moss and weeds growing everywhere, Light is unable to find much difference from the room they faced earlier. Observing the elite monster core our boy received from Ruchel, he is shocked to learn his time spent inside the dungeons was a complete waste, as he finds out he was able to receive multiple concepts from a single room, which is more than whatever he could have gotten after running the Goblin Cave 10 times. He receives fusion and acid attributes that can help him dissolve materials. He assumes these attributes dropped since he defeated the Claw Scythers. Our boy decides to imbue fusion into his weapon and lets the pet snake Eve eat the rest of the acid attribute. Dako carefully observes his actions and notices his pet snake has gotten very strong. Ban gets startled and politely requests her to stop speaking after sneaking up on him like that. She thinks it's his own fault and advises the boy to start training his senses. Otherwise, he will keep getting scared so easily. Light notices something and asks the party members if they're ready to confront more enemies. Monsters in the second room start appearing, and without wasting a second, Dako shoots a power beam in their direction. Light asks her to take things more seriously, but she becomes overconfident as she finds out the second room is not much different from the previous one. In her opinion, there's no need to be so serious, since even if a careless lion gets bitten by an ant, it doesn't lose its life. Light warns her not to drop her guard. Otherwise, she'll be in trouble if something unexpected happens. Dako decides all of them should just let Ban handle all the fighting in room 2. Our boy is shocked to hear this and wonders what she means. Light and Ruchel don't agree with her and believe it's too dangerous for all of them, but Doko doesn't back down and calls it a great idea since our boy needs to quickly improve his strength and develop new abilities because he has a sparring match coming next week. She smiles and tells them it makes perfect sense. Ban remembers she has been acting weird since earlier and anxiously wonders what he should do. The protagonist decides to handle everything in the second room all by himself. Light warns him and tells him they have no obligation to follow her orders, but Ban assures everyone it's okay and calls her right. He is aware he needs to improve his abilities and calls it a waste for them to drain themselves in the second room. He requests his party members to give him a chance to close the power gap between them. Seeing his determination, Ruchel decides to trust the protagonist. Light agrees as well, but makes it clear he won't waste a second to step in if he thinks the situation is getting out of hand. Ban shows his gratitude and requests Dako to lend him a hand if he ends up overexerting himself. She smiles and promises not to let him die if he ends up pushing himself too much. The protagonist calls out Eve and transforms her into a rifle. He starts shooting bullets at the monsters, and as the attacks hit them, the monsters start screaming in pain, shocking Light and Ruchel. The blondie questions if it's a normal weapon from Ban's world, seeing him use the rifle. He is not sure about its power, but acknowledges that with such a weapon, the protagonist can defeat the monsters at a fast rate. He's amazed by its speed and wishes he could arm the soldiers from his country with such a weapon. At first, Dako is unsure about the gun and assumes it's a fire launcher, but she quickly catches on and learns it's continuously firing metal bullets. She starts imagining using such a weapon to handle assassinations and thinks it looks extremely useful even for the martial arts world. But she realizes its weakness is the attack style, which is very linear. With this weapon, our boy can easily fight long-range battles. But in a tight space like the tower, there are all sorts of different factors. If an enemy strikes the protagonist from a blind spot, he'll be completely powerless against it. A monster pounces at Ban from behind. His party members notice and try to warn our boy about the monster coming from behind. The protagonist is able to see what's coming and quickly uses his sword to cut through the monster without much effort. He admits it scared him a little. The party members are relieved to see him okay, and Light wonders why Ban has a sword. Seeing the protagonist take a fighting stance, Light is shocked to find out he can wield a sword so well. Ruchel had no idea either. Ban is aware he's not worthy of praise and knows he's still far behind Light and Dako. Seeing his stance, Dako smiles as she recalls the training she gave him. Our boy rushes forward to defeat the monsters while Eve keeps shooting bullets persistently as well. With a few swings of his sword, Ban is able to finish multiple monsters easily. He keeps fighting for a while and continues trying determinedly. After a good while, he finally finishes defeating all the demon spirits and notices more monsters are not appearing anymore. He finds the last demon spirit and instructs Eve to tie it up. The boy knows the next shift will begin as soon as they kill the last monster, so he decides their group should take a break before finishing it off. Dako observes the dead monster spirits and learns Ban is already using his poison abilities, seeing the sword's edge melt and disintegrate. Looking at his movements and how he wields the sword, she assumes he was living a life with 0 fights and battles. She is surprised by his rapid growth despite such a normal background. Light is impressed by Ban's creativity, seeing him control the shift in such a way. Ruchel agrees with him and calls it an amazing idea someone would expect from an experienced student only. Doko praises our boy and calls his last strike excellent. He thanks her for the compliments, but she starts pointing out some of his flaws and mentions he should stop focusing on his quick sword strikes so much. She admits it's still much better than some stupid fool who aimlessly swings his sword. Light gets offended and tries to defend his name, mentioning his hard work in the previous room. Dako mocks him even more and questions why he assumed she was talking about him. In her opinion, there is no need to shout so much while cutting down shadow enemies, and it's something only a fool like him would do. Blondie grits his teeth and tells her it's not his fault. He just learned how to use the sword like this. Observing them meaninglessly argue with each other, our boy decides to pull out a drink and starts drinking, as he wonders how they can act so energetically even though the party is taking a break. Ban thinks they are not tired at all. Seeing him enjoy his drink, the party members start looking at the boy with cold expressions. Dako questions what he's drinking all by himself. Ruchel's mouth starts watering as well after experiencing the fragrant smell just now. He anxiously tells them it's sold outside, but his party members get mad at him as they all help him remember that only he has permission to go outside. He requests everyone to calm down and apologizes for not sharing anything with them. Our boy tells them he didn't bring that much. Otherwise, he would have definitely shared with them. He thinks it's useless to drink right now since such things are helpful for when you're feeling fatigued and tired. After learning it's effective when you're exhausted, Dako becomes determined to take room number 3 alone, shocking Ban. He helps her recall she's the one who suggested he should do all the fighting to grow his physical abilities. He wonders why her behavior changed so suddenly. Dako looks mad and knows she has probably never tried this flavor before. The girl thinks it's unfair for her if he keeps it all for himself. Light reminds her it's Ban's drink from the start, so she should hold back. After they're all well rested, our boy asks Eve to kill the final monster so they can move to the next room. As the demon spirit dies, the shift begins, and they start getting teleported to the next room. Ban closes his eyes to view his own stats. He admits his progress is amazing, and at this rate, he believes he has already achieved the Academy's average level. It hasn't been long since he started swinging his sword. He was able to improve his swordsmanship and piercing techniques he just started learning. He thinks he should focus more on improving his swordsmanship since he is very efficient. Our boy realizes that in his match against Erecto, his success depends on how fast he is able to grow his martial arts skills. He remembers the overwhelming difference between him and Erecto's body, and admits it's impossible for him to reach Erecto's level no matter what he does. But after Dako's martial arts training, our boy now knows that gaining abilities is still important, but it's just as crucial to master those abilities as well. He's aware that his friend Dako is amazing at martial arts and wishes he could learn one more thing from her, but decides to hold himself back and wonders why he is getting such thoughts. He understands that no matter how much strength she has, it's still not right for him to use his relationship to get such favors. Light keeps calling Ban, but he's deep in thought and tries thinking more to find a solution. The blondie screams at him to help the boy snap out of it and questions why he's zoning out now. The protagonist finally comes back to his senses and suddenly notices he is falling down. He becomes anxious and confused about his situation as he wonders why he is falling from the sky. Ruchel starts panicking after noticing there's no solid ground beneath them. Seeing the ground completely disappear, the protagonist becomes anxious at first, as he notices multiple sharp spears on the ground. He quickly calls out for Eve and uses the chains to stop Ruchel from hitting the spears below. He barely manages to save her in time and takes a breath of relief. She thanks Ban, and he starts contemplating what just happened. His situation confuses him, and he wonders why the third room is so large compared to what they saw before. He is aware of the trap at the fall point, and wonders if they have entered a room filled with hidden traps. Dako advises the protagonist to start moving quickly. Seeing her standing on the ceiling upside down, he wonders how she got up there. The girl tells him to start moving, otherwise he is definitely going to lose his life. At first he doesn't understand her warning, but quickly detects multiple spear attacks coming his way. He starts feeling hopeless, seeing no way to defend himself while trying to stop Ruchel from falling onto the spears as well. He finally comes up with a solution and calls out for Eve and Lilith. Ban swings Ruckle towards the ceiling with the help of his pet snake's chains, and before the spears can kill him, he escapes by riding Lilith and grabs Ruckle before she falls back down. Our boy questions if she's okay and apologizes for the rough handling. He tells the girl he had no other choice, given the dangerous situation. Ruchel lets him know it's okay. He advises her to hold on to him tightly and starts riding the hoverbike around the large room filled with traps. Our boy detects more spear traps and starts feeling frustrated. Meanwhile, Light defends himself from multiple axe attacks coming his way and pulls out his golden wings to escape the area being targeted by the traps. As he's flying in the air, Light wonders why they are facing such a challenge. He remembers the professor had told everyone that no rooms filled with traps appear until room 20. They are only inside the third room, and for some reason, the difficulty has increased significantly. He spots Ban riding his hoverbike and questions what he has taken out this time. While riding Lilith, Ban feels frustrated and doesn't understand why the traps keep targeting them wherever they go. He wonders about the room's structure but remains confused. Ruchel enjoys riding behind our boy, and as she remembers his advice to hold him tightly, Ruchel hugs the protagonist from behind. He starts feeling embarrassed and questions why she is acting this way out of nowhere. A few arrows hit Lilith, prompting Ban to increase its speed and try to save himself from all the spears chasing him. He realizes the situation is very dangerous and finally fends off all the attacks. Light finds Ban and asks why they are stopping all of a sudden. Seeing Light float using his wings, our boy is shocked and questions him about them. The blondie ignores his question and expresses curiosity about the artifact he is riding. He asks about it, and Ban reveals that it's called a hoverbike, assuming he is seeing it for the first time. Ban inquires about Dako, and the blondie realizes he completely forgot about her. He shares that it has been a while since he saw her and assumes the girl fell into some kind of trap. But Ban believes she didn't and trusts Dako is capable enough to avoid all the traps. Somewhere else inside the room, Dako dodges all the attacks effortlessly. Our boy believes in her and assumes she is somewhere keeping an eye on everything that is taking place inside the room. Light questions what they should do next and asks Ban if he knows anything about how the traps will stop. Ban shares that he is not aware of how the traps operate or their duration, but he remembers that according to the manual, they just need to hang in there for a certain amount of time to finish the challenge. He decides to analyze the trap pattern and instructs the blondie to run towards the other side. The guy listens to him and quickly rushes forward. The traps get activated and multiple spears are released to target the blondie. Our boy is able to understand the trap patterns and wonders if they only prioritize movement. He remembers he got stuck between the traps earlier because he was moving recklessly. Ruchel points out the arrows that ended up hitting Lilith. Ban is disappointed that mere arrows managed to injure his artifact and decides to let everyone know that unnecessary movements are the cause of trap activation. He realizes they won't be able to overcome the challenge if they stop moving and starts wondering what he should do. Out of nowhere, the arrow in his hand lights up and starts glowing, surprising the protagonist. He doesn't understand what's happening and wonders if he just absorbed a concept, even though he barely focused on it. He doesn't understand why, all of a sudden, his powers are working properly despite the fact that he was unable to read anything in the first room. He believes there is a reason behind all of this, and almost reaches a proper conclusion, but ends up assuming maybe it is just a coincidence. He decides to check to confirm and grabs a dagger. Ruchel observes what he is doing, and his hand starts glowing again, confusing him even further. Ban learns the concept of beheading, even though he was expecting something related to the sword. He questions why he acquired the beheading attribute and remembers that he experienced something similar before as well. Ruchel points toward Blondie. Ban calls him an idiot upon seeing the guy get hit by a wave of water. Light gets up and tries to stand using his sword. He regrets letting his guard down and was not expecting anything besides weapons inside the room. The water being poured out from the trap was very random, and he starts feeling like his senses are numbing and his vision is slowly getting blurry. The guy realizes there was something mixed inside the water, and at this rate, he doubts he can save himself from the next traps. Multiple more spears get released, but our boy determinedly heads toward Light on his hoverbike to save his life. Ruchel sees him leave and remembers Ban told her to stay behind since he doesn't want her to get dragged into something dangerous. He plans on doing something reckless and requests her to wait a few minutes for him to come back. Ruchel hopes Ban can stay strong. As he tries to reach his friend, Ban's hand starts glowing again after coming into contact with the water that poured out from the trap earlier. He receives the acid and wave attributes and becomes aware that his hand touched the water, but the attribute he acquired was not water. He finally understands why the concept he observed earlier was beheading instead of sword. Meanwhile, Dako, while moving inside the room, finally finds Ban. She notices him rushing toward Blondie and wonders what he's planning to do. He learns that the condition of a substance at the moment it appears defines the concept that can be acquired. Since the attacks were aimed at his neck earlier, he received the concept of beheading instead of sword. Blondie tries to stand against the traps coming his way to save his precious life, but Ban finally reaches him and decides to handle everything for him. Ban appears in front of Light to protect him, and raises his hand as he confidently tries to read the concept behind the spears that are being shot by the activated trap. Ban is able to see right through all the attacks, and suddenly his eyes start glowing as well. All the attacks around him get blocked by a magic circle, and Blondie notices Ban is moving directly toward the trap. He finally understands he doesn't have to observe everything and tries to mix all the concepts together after breaking down their form. Everything around him starts to glow with golden light, and suddenly all the traps start disintegrating. Ban becomes relieved after mastering his ability and saving his friend from dying. Ruchel observes the golden light and feels glad her friend survived. Ban finally lands, and Light rushes toward him, questioning if he's okay. Our boy knows how close they were to dying and feels glad the Blondie is completely safe. Light inquires about the glowing ball. Ban tells him he has no idea what it is, but the ball appeared after he merged all the concepts together. It feels like he has improved and gained something special. Blondie questions if he gained some new skills and is amazed to learn he can interfere with the traps in such a manner. He praises our boy, but suddenly they both notice more traps getting activated. Dako and Ruchel jump in to save them and are able to take care of all the spears easily. Dako advises Ban to fix his reckless behavior, otherwise, he is going to pay the consequences someday. They're both surprised to see her. Ban shows his gratitude and thanks both girls for saving their lives. Dako calls Blondie foolish after watching him lose focus in such a situation. Light becomes annoyed by her constant insults. They all start getting teleported, and Ruchel points out the shift has finally started and realizes it was the last trap. Blondie frustratingly tells Dako to hold herself back and stop being harsh on someone who almost died. She thinks it's his fault for getting stuck in such a stupid attack. Ban finds them funny while Blondie assumes she was waiting for an opportunity to act like a hero and jump in to save everyone. She calls him stupid for such assumptions. Ban believes Dako cares about the team, and that's the reason she jumped into such a dangerous situation to save everyone. He calls it proof of amazing teamwork and feels happy about it. Dako mentions she really was waiting for the perfect opportunity. Ban and Blondie both are surprised to hear her side of the story. She shares her plan of getting them in her debt. She's determined to make sure she collects it later. Ban was hoping their teamwork wasn't some kind of illusion, and is disappointed to learn Dako only cares about the energy drink. As the party enters the fourth room, our boy quickly observes his surroundings and notices the ceiling is lower compared to the previous room. He assumes they won't be attacked from above, at least. He notices a monster behind them and quickly turns around to attack it. Ban starts firing bullets at the monster but is stunned to see it did no damage at all. They find out it's the tower spider, which is a unique monster that randomly appears on different floors of the tower. Ban doesn't believe how it survived Eve's attacks without getting injured. Light mentions it doesn't matter which floor they're on. The stats a tower spider possesses are completely randomized. Since Ban's weapon is completely useless against the monster, the Blondie decides to handle it from here and requests Dako to lend him a hand to face the spider. She understands him and notices Ban's sad expression. He's shocked to learn they're already facing monsters of this level, even though it's only the fourth floor. Dako feels a bit frustrated and tells everyone to stay behind her. She decides to fight the spider herself and advises Ban to watch her movements closely, since this is exactly what he has been waiting for. She attacks the spiders with a huge energy blast, pushing all of them away without much effort. Ban is surprised by her attack's sheer power and admits it's much stronger compared to his pet Eve's bullets. He sees that most spiders are knocked out already, and Dako decides to leave the responsibility of finishing off the spiders to our boy. She smiles and calls herself the most merciful ruler. Seeing her behavior, he laughs awkwardly and requests Light and Ruchel to cover the rear and pay attention to the ceiling, just in case they get attacked from behind again. They all understand his instructions, and the protagonist pulls out his sword as he moves forward to finish the spiders. He finds Dako interesting and admits she's very considerate, but doesn't accept her as his ruler. Ban charges towards the spiders while wondering how he should show his gratitude to the girl for her favors. The party members are shocked to see his attack end up being completely useless. Our boy is unable to penetrate the spider's thick skin and finds it hard to finish it. The monster pounces at him to take his life, but he remains determined and believes there's always a solution to everything. Using the piercing technique he learned from Dako, the protagonist successfully kills one spider. The party members are relieved, but Light is still concerned about the boy's situation. Ban understands that slashing the spiders is completely useless as he can't penetrate their thick skin. He's aware it'll be hard to keep using the piercing technique since he's outnumbered. He smiles and admits the tower spiders are still too much for him to handle, but calls himself an idiot for not using the amazing thing he acquired in the previous room. He imbues the concept with his sword to increase its stats, and decides to test the compatibility of the new concept with his sword by fighting a few spiders. The system shows the sword has evolved as a result of amazing compatibility with the wielder. Multiple spiders pounce toward the protagonist at once, but he determinedly prepares himself to attack and decides to give his sword a try. He's easily able to cut through the thick skin of the spiders now and kills one of the monsters. The party members are shocked to see the sudden improvement. Dako becomes speechless. Despite landing a clean cut, our boy is still not satisfied and wonders if it's because he swung his sword too hard. He decides to try again and faces the tower spiders alone. Light rushes forward to join Ban, while Ruchel also follows him. Dako believes the protagonist has definitely changed something about his sword and has become powerful enough to cut through the spiders he couldn't even touch just a moment ago. She's shocked and wonders how someone can possess such instinctive and immense talent. She observes our boy fight against the spiders and cut them one by one. Seeing him not depend on his powers alone and continue to hone his skills is a bit surprising to her, since usually whenever someone acquires a strong weapon or a power-up, they end up acting foolish. Dako is unable to see such flaws in Ban, and believes that even if he's really weak right now, one day the protagonist will reach the real essence of Chop without anyone's help. She accepts that she's in no position to interfere with his amazing journey, but feels like it's a waste to leave it like that. Dako recalls her past and remembers she took pride in being called the greatest prodigy of the martial arts world after she was able to overcome the 3 calamities. But now, she stands observing someone whose talent is far better and makes her past look like a joke. While Ban was busy risking his life improving his technique against the tower spiders, Dako Yan was plotting to make him her property. Suddenly, he felt an eerie chill run down his back for a second. It was so palpable that he had to retreat, much to Light's confusion. He thought an elite monster was about to show up or something. Ban turned to Dako, telling her to use her energy blasts and help instead of just standing by. Since he did most of the work on this floor, she doesn't deserve that Pocari sweat. While he was continuously teasing Dako with the cold cans of Pocari sweat, the student started receiving a ping, an external message of sorts. Receiving the glaring notification was an alarming sight, to say the least. The party regrouped to see what the external message was about. Basically, it was an urgent letter telling every student to leave the tower as fast as possible. The directive came directly from the academy's headmaster. For some reason, Ruchel's sharpened instincts tell her that this is fishy. Dako initially refused to acknowledge the message. She hasn't even warmed up yet. She hasn't had a taste of Ban's sweet drink either. But it looks like they won't have a choice in the matter as Ruchel warned the party that it's coming. They all shared a few seconds of silence to feel the vibe. Suddenly, multiple portals containing countless tower spiders opened in front of the party. Now, it makes sense why the faculty wanted to pull their students out. They have heard of scenarios like this from their meetings with Professor Yumina. The anomaly explains why the difficulty of their trials felt out of whack. Their only lifeline was connected to the outside world. Their student IDs had no signal. Without the multiple functions of their IDs, they are essentially trapped in this cursed room full of spiders. This is what the professor meant when she talked about phenomena where even students can die inside the tower. The army of tower spiders did not give them time to organize and map their plan of attack. These disgusting crawlers came from every angle possible. They flooded the floor with sheer numbers and scaled the walls and ceilings just to cover every area. This can only occur due to the spatial irregularity of the tower. Professor Yumina once broached the topic of dimensional pirates invading the tower frequently, especially when freshmen are on the climb. The pirates themselves are a nuisance, but the bigger problem is the abnormality that their invasion brings. They cause irregular and unpredictable phenomena to occur. Normally, students would not die in a regular exploration, but spatial irregularity changes that. The rules of the tower get twisted, and areas that used to be safe become dangerous. While inside a danger zone, the number of monsters multiply uncontrollably. The difficulty of different rooms spikes unpredictably, and that's just the start. A multitude of other problems also rear their ugly heads simultaneously. Dimensional pirates are the bane of academy students. Professor Yumina shared all of this to show her students that the tower does not care about their safety, and they must always keep that fact in mind. If they ever find themselves caught in an irregular phenomenon, they must realize the severity of the danger they are in. Right now, the party is trying their best to do just that. Ban managed to bring Lilith out to break through one of the walls, entering a bigger portion of the room for better spacing. They don't really know how long the spiders will keep on spawning, so holding their last stand in a cramped area would have been a risky death sentence. Ruchel snarled at the beasts while Dako was deep in thought. Behind every point of entry in the room, hundreds of spider eyes glowed in the dark. Their sheer number was so high that virtually every speck of the halls was filled with spiders. When the beast finally broke through, it looked like a tsunami of arachnoids swallowing everything it touched. They seemed utterly endless. Dako's answer to the sea of tower spiders creeping and crawling to end their lives was an energy blast. Her sheer power channeled in a purely destructive form was an effective spider repellent. Light used his divine artifact and superior swordsmanship to slice and dice any spider that dared to get close. Both Dako and Light cannot afford to stop or even pause a little, or the endless waves of monsters would simply swallow them up. Watching from behind, Ban was very impressed with how efficient Dako was. It's only been a few seconds, and she has already killed dozens. Light was no slouch either. His ferocity was an effective method of culling, but the intensity of this defense was wearing them out too fast. As for Ruchel, the young lady was busy on her own side of the battlefield as she clawed her way through the eight-legged army. At this point, her hair is already more than half black. She's pushing herself too far. The innocence and shyness she had were nowhere to be seen. Sweet Ruchel was barely speaking the human tongue anymore. If her hair fully changed, who knows what would happen. All Ban knows is that it would be a nightmare scenario. The spiders are tough, and they need all hands on deck. Dako also noticed that Ruchel's dwindling control over herself was slowly slipping away. She can't go on much longer either. If Dako does not take a breather soon, her focus will deteriorate, and it'll get more dangerous for everyone. So Ban tossed him a can of that sweet Pocari sweat that she wanted to try before. For now, he'll hold the spiders off while Dako takes a much-needed rest and drink. She gladly accepted the can and lovingly asked Ban if he could handle the downpour of infinite enemies. He chuckled and pulled out a fucking frag grenade. While removing the pin, he assured her that he'd handle the spiders. Ban aimed at the area where the densest group of tower spiders were concentrated. Silence filled the room while the grenade traveled behind enemy lines. Finally, before it even reached the floor, the grenade lit up like a disco ball and unleashed a terrifying amount of destructive power. The resulting explosion torched the tower spider army within the area of effect. Light and the rest of the party had no clue what was going on. He asked Ban what kind of power he had just unleashed. Ban was quite proud of the result of his grenade. He put a lot of effort into crafting that thing, after all. Riding Lilith the hover motor, Ban drove into the burning spider army to let Light rest up too. Ruchel looks like she still has plenty of energy, but she's acting way too unpredictable to rely on right now. With more and more monsters coming out of the woodwork, who knows how long their little party can last? Letting Light and Dako rest and replenish their energy is the best current option. Ban just needs to take down as many spiders as possible so he can buy his comrades a little more time to recover. Suddenly, he was granted 15 points of blood poison mastery for his executioner's longsword. Even his grasp on the concept of chop has reached the next level. These new improvements manifested themselves by changing the color of Ban's blade. His boring executioner's longsword had turned completely crimson red. He had no clue where this blood poison enchantment was based, but it should buff his weapon, right? Ban would just have to figure out what the concept entails through trial and error against the tower spiders. With Lilith on autopilot, Ban sped up and cut right to the middle of the surviving spiders while slashing his blade everywhere. He noticed that his sword's trajectory had changed from before. His effective attack range mysteriously extended by a decent bit. After a few more tests, Ban figured out that while chop strengthens the slash itself, the concept of blood poison extends that strength to a broader attack range and distance. It does so by sucking the user's own blood as fuel. It's a technique that Ban won't be able to use too often and for too long. It felt like he was donating a bag of blood with every swing. Light also noticed the change in his longsword and curiously asked what was with the crimson sword aura. As for Ruchel, she's out on the opposite side of the battlefield, massacring spiders left and right, which is no big deal. But the party found it wiser not to directly approach her while she was wreaking havoc. Ban also wanted Light and Dako to rest a bit more, but they felt like they had rested enough already. Looking around, the swarm of spiders that seemed infinite at first had noticeably decreased. Ban took down a lot on his own. The flow of the monsters has mysteriously stopped. Back in the academy, they learned that when a monster wave halts, there are two usual causes. It's either because the battle is over and won, or something stronger is about to show up. Berserker Ruchel had her eyes on absolutely eviscerating every spider she could get her hands on. But when she felt an imminent threat entering from behind, the mindless berserker's survival instincts took over. It seems like they're done dealing with countless tower spider swarms. It's time to face a much bigger and stronger monster now. Ban panicked. As far as everybody knew, the massive ones like the one in front of them should only appear around room 50. It must have been transported thanks to the continuously breaking patterns in their expedition. Everyone had drawn their weapons and focused on the massive spider, but Light's attention was elsewhere. Blondie urged Ban to look behind and asked if it was possible for two elite monsters to show up at once. When he finally saw what Light was worried about, Ban was stunned in silence. They just hit the jackpot for the worst of the worst-case scenarios out there. Elite monsters up front and in the rear. 4 special admission students versus 2 overpowered beasts. Light blamed the school's manual for not preparing them properly for their first tower experience. Dako remained unbothered as usual. Meanwhile, Ruchel continuously drew in the mysterious and barbaric power inside her body. She was the first one to stop standing around to run at one of the spiders with fangs and claws out. She might be running in recklessly while chanting war cries, but maybe it's for the best. Ban took charge of the situation and tasked Light to assist Ruchel with one of the elites. They are splitting up into 2 teams to take on 1 giant spider each. The bit beast on the rear is Ban and Dako's target. They should manage to make it out of this alive somehow, right? Being the good soldier that he is, Light followed the plan while Ban and Dako were left to fend for themselves. Ban raised his blade. He so confidently divided the workload for 2 teams, but he had no clue how to deal with one of these giants. He needed the concepts of chop and blood poison just to be able to cut through the small tower spiders. It would undoubtedly take more than that for the big boss. Dako continued sipping on her Pocari Sweat while Ban was stressing over his next move. She teased Ban for putting her on the same team. Here he is, knowing that he can't win solo, yet still refusing to ask for her help. Dako playfully asked if that's how prideful and stubborn he really was. She confessed that she enjoyed the Pocari Sweat. It was an unusual flavor, but she liked it. For the first time since they entered the tower, Doko-yan summoned her weapon. From now on, the elite monster will pay the price for the drink's sweetness. It might seem like an unfair trade, an excessive cost, but in Dako's perspective, it's really not. Ban stood behind her. The fear he felt for her sword was more apparent than the fear he felt for the elite spider. Dako's movement was mesmerizing. Each gesture had a life of its own. Even though she usually does everything with her bare hands, she's using a weapon now. Maybe she's trying to show Ban something for a reason. Dako just did not want to get her hands dirty when she finally slays the beast. In her mind, she was already preparing to give Ban the one move that he still lacked. Showing him this next technique once should be enough. With Ban's analytical talent, he should be able to find the answer through a single showing of her slash. While Dako's energy rises to the peak, she urged Ban to watch carefully. Dako's moment was interrupted by what sounded like the growls of an untamed wild animal going berserk. It just turned out to be Ruchel, who's finally gone out of control, turning her fangs against Light instead of the giant bloody spider. She stopped listening to her team a while ago. Her hair had lost its pink hue and her behavior ever more primal. Taking advantage of the friendly fire scuffle, the spider turned its ass to the students and shot its thick, white and sticky web. Both Light and Ruchel were in no position to defend against such a tricky attack. Nevertheless, Ruchel's superior reaction time and instincts got her out of that sticky mess effectively, leaving Light to get webbed. Finally, the berserker had readjusted her target back to the intended enemy. She continued growling like a wild animal while Light was totally incapacitated below. When the elite spider started snarling with a disturbingly guttural voice, she roared back. It was a freak-off. Ban watched the whole sequence and sighed at how messy those two were. Dako demanded that he focus his attention on her now, to look at her and only her. Just as he was worrying about the spider they had to somehow deal with, Ban noticed something ridiculous. Dako just finished her single slash and gloated that there's nothing to worry about anymore. She just one-shotted an elite boss. She sliced that beast in half effortlessly, just to show Ban another technique he could copy. Now, all they have to worry about is the other elite spider giving Light and Ruchel a hard time.